We're back, folks. Once again, Grin Grappler. Another month, another wrestler, and I think this is, or at least it feels like to me, one of the more unique entries. Even though, in truth, Kevin has a lot of overlap with a handful of guys we've done, but he never quite feels that way, and that's why it's going to be an interesting show. We certainly are going to travel some places we have not been previously in this Grin Grappler journey. It's going to be a hell of a time. Kevin Owens, Kevin Steen is our subject expert panel as always. Bobby Two Shoes, how are you, mate?
I'm doing well, man. I'm fired up for this one. Big Kevin Owens fan. Enjoyed all these matches. Watched them earlier today. I think it was really cool, and we'll get into it more as we go along. But it's really cool that you can kind of see he's still basically the same wrestler that he was 20 years ago. He does a couple moves that he doesn't do anymore, but a lot of guys, kind of change. But he's still, and Sammy, for what we saw too, they're still kind of the exact same. It's really cool.
He's actually, and if you're getting ahead of ourselves, Bob, you've led with such a good point. This is one of the things I wanted to talk about in terms of like, it's actually kind of baffling how little Kevin's core identity as a wrestler has changed.
Mm-hmm.
To the point where it's kind of like makes you rethink your whole perception of him, and you kind of quickly realize that like this guy probably should have been on TV a lot earlier than he was, but he just had a look that disguised that to everyone that was actually making those decisions. He's a fascinating case. Speaking of fascinating cases, the Oracle of Wrestling is in attendance as always. a pizza alongside him. Oracle, we're going to get into our fandom for this wrestler, this month's wrestler, but I know you, like me, you've had your ups and downs with old KO. How do you feel about this process here? Now that you've watched the matches, you fired up to talk about them. Are you unsure where you stand?
I mean, I didn't love all the matches, but none of them were bad. I've found myself enjoying him a lot more in the last few years when he's become a babyface. I prefer this KO that we've been getting the last 3 years. Yeah. Sort of, I don't know. He's very McFoley-esque, you know. Phil Schneider once, the writer for The Ringer, once dubbed him as what did he say? Basically, the ethnic babyface for internet wrestling fans, which I think was an awesome description. And when Owens first came in, I actually liked him as like this vicious heel that turned on Sammy, right? When he first started, but by the end of his first year, like on the main roster, he became like this laugh out loud heel that was like ironic and like, I don't know. He was getting on my nerves, and then like a year later, he was doing the USA shit, which was just unbearable. And I think even he was very aware of how bad it was. But for example, he randomly followed me on Twitter one time. That was weird. But hope you're watching, Kevin. Hope you're doing well.
That was a time, wasn't it? That was a night.
But yeah, funny enough, when he started that stupid Shane McMahon feud that I'm sure Joe loved,
which time?
Exactly.
The second one where Kevin was a babyface in 2019.
Right.
That's when I kind of started to be like, okay, you know. And then the Rollins feud and stuff, and I was like, okay, he's kind of entertaining as a babyface. And then the first Roman program when he was a babyface during the Thunderdome era, which I mean nobody really wants to revisit, but they had some great matches. And,
great matches, yeah.
I started to jump on the bandwagon a little bit, and I've come to appreciate the guy. I think he's a good promo. He's entertaining. He can be funny. He can be serious. He generally works the same match all the time, which is grating. But I think he's a pretty good tag worker, and I've always actually liked him as a tag wrestler. Even the brief time he and Generico tagged, I thought he was pretty good. But long story short, I've come to become a fan of the guy. I really like that he's kind of being booked as like the sort of McFoley-esque type character.
Right.
I think it fits him well.
He certainly does. The audience definitely loves him, right? He's one of those guys who's kind of universally beloved with that audience, and it's allowed him to be very effective in that role. Alex, firstly, how are you? And secondly, you seem to be among us, and I was very on board also, and Bob's a big fan, but you seemed, dare I say, inspired by this selection of wrestlers. I feel your brain realized there were some avenues we could visit here that maybe not necessarily are always on the board. So yeah, firstly, how are you? And secondly, how are you feeling after going through these KO matches or Steen matches in some cases?
I'm doing well. As always, a pleasure and an honor to be back on board with the lads. So look forward to this monthly, if nothing else, than to just bullshit. But yeah, going pretty well. So yeah, I realized going through these matches, and when I got to the end, I was writing down like my other matches to recommend to watch. The majority of the Kevin Owens run is kind of like there are like big not bullet points, but there are big memorable matches along the way. But for the most part, I was thinking back, I was like, man, he's just been around for so long. I kind of forgot all the shit he's done. Like the Foley thing is right too, because like I don't watch weekly or anything, but the period of time where he was like the big bump guy, like he would get thrown off the cage, or like the Performance Center WrestleMania, he jumped off the WrestleMania sign, shit like that. But now prior to that though, and as we'll get into, he was like my guy. As I'm positive I've said on here before, my guys were Bryan Danielson and Chris Hero. And at the point where like Steen was on the ascent, and like he's the reason I got back into Ring of Honor. We'll kind of get into that with his title win, but like there were a rough couple years, man, of Ring of Honor, and him like coming to the forefront, in my opinion, kind of gave them back a lot of eyes and kind of gave them momentum they desperately needed. But even before that, I remember reading in high school is when I found out about him I was a very loyal CZW fan and their message boards and whatnot, and finding out about him. And I'm not trying to be funny. I'm not trying to do a bit. The first time I saw him wrestle, I'm like, well, that's cool. He wrestles in a t-shirt, which of course, became subject of legend and with our friend Phil Brooks. And I remember too, like, it's kind of funny now. I'm a big bag of shit. So I'm a fat piece of shit. So if I comment on anyone's body during this, please understand it's from a place of self-awareness. But like, he was kind of big for his when he started, which he's a big boy. It's just the way he's built. And so like, I was so glad. I kind of worried that I didn't pick a match where he does a 450. But I remember the first time I saw him do a 450, I was like, what the fuck? And then like, the exclusivity and gatekeeping that came along with being an independent wrestling fan at that point in time, where it was not anywhere nearly as accessible as it is now. And so like getting to watch that every once in a while, it kind of felt special. And particularly his feud with Super Dragon and PWG, which bled over into CZW, that felt like some special shit. And he was just an interesting guy in the sense that he was so polarizing. I don't know if y'all recall that or no, but like when he came into the indie scene, that's one of the reasons I picked one of the matches we did, because it was met with kind of this guy. So it's been an interesting run, but yeah, he was like my guy. And I remember like, I have so much of his Kevin Steen merch. When this came up, I was like, all right, time to dip into the reserves and the memory bank and, dig out some of the classics that I remember from back in the day. And I'm sure we're going to get conflicting reviews between the four of us, but I'm excited to talk about some of these.
Yeah, I think that's inevitable, right? Especially with guys that are more modern. I think there's just a difference in viewpoint that's kind of going to inevitably emerge. But in terms of him being polarizing within that scene, I was reading something earlier today in prep for this. It was Handwork Reviews, who do some extraordinary match reviews. I remember I sent Oracle their review of Triple H and Seth Rollins from WrestleMania 33, which I believe is one of the finer pieces of literature in wrestling history. But they were talking about Kevin, how one of the things that makes him kind of interesting and weird is he is often framed and presented, and I'm not saying unfairly, but he's framed as like a quintessential independent wrestling guy, right? In terms of his look and the way. But Kevin's influences are the complete opposite of that, where he's a total WWF, WWE guy as a fan. He didn't like anything other than that whatsoever. And he only even,
famously did not know Nakamura when he wrestled him.
Exactly. Like, and it's just, he's kind of fascinating in that way. He doesn't really fit into the box that necessarily people always wanted to put him in. And I actually think that's present in a couple of the matches we're going to do today. So we'll cross that bridge as we come to it. But Bobby, you know, I know Kevin's one of your favorites, right? One of your main guys, I'd say right now. Fair to say, Bob?
Yeah, he is. And I was trying to think earlier, like how I came to know of him, because I wasn't really watching Ring of Honor or whatever, but they made it a big deal when he was coming into NXT. And that was when NXT was kind of like really taking off. You know, they just started the takeovers and all that. And yeah, just kind of the way he came in, you know, attacking Sammy after Sammy finally paid off his big story. It's great stuff. And then kind of from there, I just followed him. And then once he got to the main roster, you know, Brock was kind of doing his part-time thing. So I'm like, this is going to be my guy from now on. And it's been some ups and downs, but overall, I think really picked a good guy to support the past 8 years.
Certainly. He's that first night on the main roster was so high that there was always going to be an inevitable kind of sagging after that, right? Yeah. And there was one, certainly. Like, goes without saying there was.
Yeah, he came out and confronted Cena, and I bought the shirt. I still have the shirt right now. So, yeah.
Look at Bobby prepared with physical props and all sorts. And, you know, there was a second after that, but he's kind of withstood so much that now I was watching him this weekend, and it's like, this is now 8 years into his run. This is like an all-time run when you look at it now with full context, you know, and let's be real, the last few years have been a big part of that as Oracle got into. So he's a really interesting, in terms of my own fandom, certainly overlap in terms of, Alex, when you mentioned about getting back into Ring of Honor with Ken, I don't think it can be overstated for people that aren't aware. He was like the sole talking point for that promotion in like the early 2010s range. That pocket of time where TNA had completely lost itself to Hogan and co. WWE was WWE, you know, indeed, was where it was. Ring of Honor was more like, in a lot of ways in that time, Ring of Honor was more what people wanted it to be than what it actually was under Sinclair in that kind of transition spot. And Kevin was the sole guy who had the people's attention. And obviously, that's especially hilarious now, and what we now know, and honestly knew then regarding the power that be and the regime at charge. But it's really interesting to look back on some of these matches and kind of realize that, you know, sometimes we do this show and you see a guy develop and grow. And I think that happened here. But honestly, it's kind of staggering how long this guy has been great at pro wrestling. I don't think we do a good enough job of appreciating this guy's longevity. Like, we talk about Owens, and he's not underrated by any means. I'm not trying to say that. He's a celebrated wrestler of the era. But when you talk about the guys who have been these kind of, you know, they're like these immovable forces in the industry, right? Like AJ Styles just had another world title match on the weekend. And we all talk about, my God, how's this guy still going? Kevin hasn't been going that long, but he's a lot closer than I think the general consensus understands and appreciates. Our first match here goes back to 2004. Like, it's outrageous. So he's been pretty damn extraordinary, is the point. And while I'm with Oracle, I've had the same ups and downs. Like, in the end, it's like you kind of can't help but be won over by him. So with that in mind, let's get into the matches themselves. Firstly, it's probably worth explaining kind of our approach to these acts, right? Our general outline was we were going to do work in Ring of Honor, independent work outside of it, and then WWE. And it just so happened the way it worked out, the kind of middle section there of outside of Ring of Honor chronologically came first anyway, and we have a nice kind of through line to follow, which I thought was ideal. Also, we kind of debated and kicked around the best way to handle the Generico Sami Zayn link, right? Like, do you do a lot of it or do you do a little bit? In the end, I concluded we'll do a match for each act because, let's be real, it's maybe the most unique thing about both of their careers is that they're like these forever soulmates who can't get away from each other whether they want to or not. And that's especially relevant now. So we've got one of those matches each for each act. So with that in mind, let's get rolling. Act 1, pre-Ring of Honor, much, you know, not quite literally. I don't think the time was exactly matched. Basically so. We start December 11th, 2004. We head to CZW, Cage of Death 6. The physical media is appearing on the screen as Steen is alongside El Generico, it's Excalibur and Super Dragon. The first question that has to be asked, the Oracle of Wrestling, your reaction when the word Excalibur appeared on a match listing that you would be using your eyes to watch?
I was like, oh, my first Excalibur matches probably suck. But no, I mean this was fine. I'm a huge Super Dragon fan, just just like Alex is. I mean, he comes in there and fucking dumps people on their heads and punches people hard. I mean, it's basically a shoot with him.
He's your sort of wrestler, right? He's your sort of wrestler.
And like this match did like, I'm sure there's a story to it, and I'm sure Alex will help us, fill in the blanks on that. But it was really more just like these four guys like hitting big stuff on each other and like trying to one up each other in terms of like, I don't know, trying to break each other's necks. Like Super Dragon always pops me because, first of all, the Psycho Driver's like, that's got to be one of the craziest.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many times like he's like.
I believe it's called the KOD now.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. The amount of times he's like shown up, at PWG randomly, like every like 3 years or whatever, and just kills somebody with a Psycho Driver is like always the highlight of like any PWG clip I see. It's like he's just like I mean, you can tell he's like he's like old and kind of out of shape. And he's out there. He's like, oh, I'm gonna pick this person up for a Psycho Driver and fucking kill him.
He gets like every time he does come back to, he immediately gets injured somehow.
Yes,
like,
yes,
shit.
exactly. He's a fascinating one. He was one of those guys with that came up with Blitzkrieg, right, in the late 90s.
Yep.
Yeah. That's what I thought. People forget about that Blitzkrieg, who was a WCW cruiserweight, was a California indie guy who. Basically, I don't remember exactly how they found him, but like he was doing crazy shit, and Bischoff was like, "Oh,
such a strange story." He just like quit wrestling out of nowhere, and like and Jack Evans became Blitzkrieg 2 for a while, and then people just still talk about Blitzkrieg, and no one really knows where he is. He's just kind of like, all right, well, I wrestled Hoovy on Spring Stampede. I'll catch y'all later.
Insane story.
Well, it's funny to see like. For specifically with Owens, he's always had like this certain sort of, I don't even know what it is. I don't even mean this negatively. And he's always had this kind of, I'm thinking of the pre-match promo he cuts, right?
Oh, yeah.
And it kind of surprised me that he's always kind of been that way this whole time, not only as an in-ring worker, right?
Yeah,
but
he still feels like the same
and
guy.
obviously he's gotten better. I mean, 20 years makes you better, but like he's still the same personality, and it's almost it's actually kind of charming because like he's over here doing like like the Memphis stick or whatever on the mic before the match, and I don't know, it just made me think like, damn, he was doing this for 20 years.
Just like when Super Dragon's like walking towards me as a mic, he's like, "Get back!" Like that's something he would do on Raw or like any pay-per-view anytime.
Right, exactly. Like he's just, I don't know. It's kind of a random thought, but it kind of made me like appreciate him more because it was like of like anything from that match other than Super Dragon trying to hurt people, which I like. That's kind of the one thing that stood out to me was Owens' sort of his posturing and his pre-match mic work and stuff. I just thought he really kind of figured it out pretty early in terms of the kind of basics, You
bring up the pre-match promo. I do have to call out and Alex said, please in a moment, like try and give us some of the lore here because I'm not super clued in at all. But Kevin being like, Generico, you and I, we've got to put our differences aside for the sake of this tag match. And like you look at the date and it's like, there is no way there is anything quite like this particular tag. Like they would put their differences aside in December 2004. I see them do a pre-tape arguing with each other in Saudi Arabia on Saturday, for WWE, and it's like, what? It's just outrageous. So with that in mind, Alex, what context you brought it? Did they say this was their first time in CZW on commentary? I believe they said that, right?
Not the first time, but what? I don't remember why this came up originally, but I'll try to give as truncated version of this as I can. So Super Dragon had wrestled in CZW at Best of the Best 2. I don't know if y'all remember B-Boy. B-Boy was like the West Coast guy that got regular bookings in CZW, and then for one of the Best of the Best, he brought Super Dragon over. So what happened was Sexy Eddie was in Tournament of Death. I think it was Tournament of Death 3, and that's he had the match where he went through a bundle of light tubes and it sliced whatever your artery that runs through here is, and it was like squirting out, and he would, when he made a fist, it would like squirt harder, and it got in the camera. It's like an insane visual, and he squirted this blood into his mouth, and Zandig freaked out, and Zandig was like, he just assumed any Canadian wrestler that like Sexy Eddie knew was exactly the same, like they would do the same thing. And so they had a show in a couple months before this where Zandig, I guess, was just like, all right, get some guys from that IWS promotion to come with you and do this 4-way. So it ended up being Sexy Eddie, El Generico, Kevin Steen, and I think the guy's name was Excess. That match is just spot, but it's so fucking good because you can tell like they're all just like, well, we're probably never being back, so like let's see what we can do here. On the same show, there was like a PWG showcase 4-way that was Super Dragon, Excalibur, Bobby Quance, and B-Boy, I believe. This is off the top of my head. If that's correct, I'm sad I'm able to know that so easily. But and the thing was, like, everyone was talking about the IWS one afterwards because like that was the first time anyone had seen the Brain Busta or like the Package Pile Driver and shit, and some of the stuff Sexy Eddie did. So people were like, "Holy shit!" So it was basically like, Super Dragon and Excalibur wanted to defend PWG against these two guys, and that's basically the extent of the story coming in Cage of Death 6. And Cage of Death 6, that's CZW's X7, brother. Like, if you ever get a chance to just look over that card, you could see they had the 2 rings set up, so they had war games for the 2 Cage of Death matches. The great Eddie Kingston was in one of them, teaming with the Blackout and to take on Team Cash. But so it was basically just, and you can see like CZW is rightly a punchline now, but they drew real crowds. There was like a real crowd at this show, and it was a big deal. And for you youngins, I remember the forum the day after reading like the results from the show, and everyone was talking about this tag match, and you have to see it. And I had to wait 6 months for the DVD to come out, and I got it as a birthday gift, and which would have been just around this time, whatever year it was, because my birthday just happened. And then so I watched the show, but this match I watched so many times. And I'll get to my thoughts on the actual match in just a minute here. Scrambles and just the idea of this match have just been done to death since that. It is what it is. But this was like mind-blowing shit at the time. And is obviously a match where they're just like, we're going to do every single thing we can to try to like steal the show or whatever. And it went over well, and this match kind of cemented the hype of those 4-ways. And for Steen and Generico, they became regulars in CZW after this. Same with Excalibur and Super Dragon. I think they were kind of already on their way though. But my first time kind of seeing these guys after reading about them for so long, Super Dragon is like one of the coolest looking wrestlers ever.
Absolutely.
Like, just when you see him, you're like, this guy looks fucking awesome. And then on top of that, he just beats the shit out of people for real. There's the spot in this, and I think all of us agree what's done to death is the forearm exchange. If you're going to do that, do it like Steen and Super Dragon do here, where they're really hitting each other as hard as they can. Like, you signed up for the job, not me, so don't pussyfoot it when you get there, all right? So the first time I saw this, I was like, what the fuck is this? And like, I was 17 probably. And like, it took me a little while to kind of get the El Generico thing. Like because Super Dragon's there and Steen's like super serious, and like El Generico's kind of like goofy, but still like wrestling really well. And one of the matches we're talking about here, his mannerisms as like a babyface are like just unbelievable.
Absolutely.
But yeah, this was fucking awesome, and I still I can't overlook my nostalgia for it and like how I felt the first time I watched it. But showing it to someone in 2023 who this is pretty standard stuff now of just like move, dive. I don't think enough guys fall on their head anymore, but that, that's a different thing altogether.
Dang.
There's a combo Super Dragon has in here that he was the only guy I ever saw do it, where it was a rolling suplex, but it was German Dragon Tiger. Like he mixed it up on each suplex, and that would probably not be fun to take. But again, you guys signed up for the job, not me. Let's see here. Oh, I did take note. One of my holy grail. So my holy grail wrestling item is the Super Card of Honor 12 shirt. That was the Mega Powers Explode, but with Cody and Kenny on it. My second holy grail item that is, I'm pretty sure, impossible to obtain is the event shirt for Cage of Death 6. I saw fans in the front row wearing it. And I was just like, you motherfuckers, you didn't know what you had here. I do really have a nostalgia for CZW, and through the years, even at this period, I'm not going to act like there wasn't just massive LOL moments, because Zandig was not what I would consider a sane human being. But still, there was, the level was about to be raised. Like Ring of Honor, you could make the argument CZW was, like, at this point in time, the top, like, Northeast independent promotion with the way they were drawing and stuff, because somewhere right around this is when Joe lost the belt, and then ROH kind of went on to a new level with, like, Brian becoming a bigger player and whatnot. But so this show is kind of like, in many ways, their peak in terms of drawing ability, and also just the card they have here. A little known wrestler named Roderick Strong was on the undercard and had a banger match as well. So if you can believe that, Joe.
Wow, he doesn't do that often. That's very unique. Roddy Strong having a banger on the undercard. My God.
The Brain Busta is not the prettiest one in this, but that is just like an insane move. The fact that people like regularly agreed to take that move is just absolutely ridiculous. And this is probably the one match on this lineup to talk about this generation of indie guys who, we joke, and me and Devin and others do like the fall on your head, really hit each other's stuff. But the Super Dragon, constantly injured, Excalibur, too many concussions to do anything. It's amazing. Steen and Generico have held up as well as they have, but still, like, you go back and you watch it and you're like, fuck yes. Like, there's, short of any of these guys committing some sort of crime, it's still really a pleasure to go back and watch. And second to the Brain Busta, the Psycho Driver, and especially the way Generico chose to take it in this match is just like, dog, you guys lucked out here. Something that's not on the YouTube version, that's really funny, is when Super Dragon and Excalibur come out, they're billed as a total combined weight of 875 pounds. Like, it's just... At this point, though, Super Dragon had already fought a fan in CZW, so he was already starting to cultivate, like, his kind of following that he would have. And then, since this is CZW, the one thing I took note of that I wanted to remember to talk about, I don't know if you've ever heard this, Joe, but, like, Steen became one of their champions and was there for a while, and I guess the end goal, his last match in the company, was he was going to do Tournament of Death and wrestle Zandig, and, like, it fell apart for whatever reason, and that makes me so sad that we don't have a Zandig Kevin Steen match to go back to. He said, like, they had pretty much laid it out that, like, he said, I'll do tax and shit. I'm not doing any glass or anything like that, but I'll do tax and barbed wire and we can figure it out. And then I know their ending there was not good. Right. They didn't. Yeah. It did not end well, but it
seldom did, right? Honestly, it seldom did end well.
It was the platform that they got to. And I think that's a good way of tying it back. CZW was the first platform both of those guys got to show a bigger audience what they could do. And this match is an example of just like, well, we're going to do everything we can, so when people leave, they're going to be talking at least about something that we did. And they're really, like, I do have nostalgia for those days of, like, this and the Ring of Honor DVDs where, like, Joe Kobashi, I remember, just reading the forum posts about how great it was, and there was no way to see it until you got the DVD in the mail. So I don't hate that I have all wrestling at my fingertips now, but there was something kind of special, and definitely look back and kind of an overly saccharine nature about. Great match, loved it at the time, still love it, but if you're watching it for the first time today, it's not going to mean as much to you.
I definitely think, like, the big kind of headline of the match is the closing stretch, especially, right, where they just, like, they throw all semblance of tag rule or structure out the window and just do everything, as you said. And that part of the match is definitely less effective to fresh eyes now because that is just, as you said, that's the match now. Like that's just what a match looks like now. I will say though, I do think it's worth noting, like the first like act and change of this match is like a traditional professional wrestling tag match, which I found to be like a fascinating choice considering where they wound up. Because Generico, they have like a almost Generico has like a nice little babyface shine, and then they get some serious heat on Generico, and by the end of the match, you almost forget that was even part of the match because you're just like, whoa, there's so much going on. So that did pop me that there was that, because that's where you get the Super Dragon spot where he like plays the tag partner of the guy he's getting heat on, right? That deal, which I'd imagine a lot of people now know that as like the Matt Jackson spot, which is very funny. But Excalibur always tries to say, Super Dragon, right? Yeah, he always says it. Yeah. But yeah, that did stand out to me that you got that here. And you brought up, I'm going to say it regularly, every time I watch these dudes bum, it's like, how are these two fellas still like doing this? Like Sammy's beat up. Kevin, I'd imagine, is beat up, but he doesn't really perform that way. He kind of just wrestles the exact same way.
Zane's shoulders, especially, wasn't he the one on double shoulder surgery like 5 years ago?
And he was like,
he threw his shoulder out, getting the crowd hyped up.
Well, there you go. And for a while there, he was like almost playing like a Bobby Heenan role on TV, right? Remember when he was kind of like a bumping manager for a stretch? It was. It's been interesting watching in that regard. But yeah, there's some crazy bumps here. This is a really fun one, Bobby. There's so many questions I have for you as someone who watched this. There's so much in my mind. We're going to go through step by step. Firstly, what did you think of it?
I thought, it was interesting because the point you guys made where, like, this is just kind of how tag matches are now. Like, I got that. But also, if you were able to put yourself kind of in that mindset, like, you weren't seeing this in WWE. You weren't really seeing this too much in TNA, like, at the time. So if you're able to get that mindset with it, it's definitely worth watching. I think it's a really good starting point for what we're doing, too. I actually enjoyed it quite a bit.
Tremendous. The big question, I feel, is this the first time you've seen Super Dragon?
Yes.
My God. Making history here, folks, on Grin Grappler. What did you think of Super Dragon?
He's fun to watch. I enjoy watching him.
Yes.
I do.
You should really check out him beating up your buddy Necro Butcher, Bobby.
Dude, that match. Yeah. That's one of those that, like, the finish of that match, I don't know how fucking Necro did not get paralyzed from that, dude. That was unreal. I forgot to shout out the Violence Party in this, though. That's too many people try, like Candice LeRae, I know that's one of her spots now, and other people try to use the Violence Party, and it's again, I appreciate the nod and whatnot, but you're not going to do the same thing if you're not just actually kicking someone in the face.
Indeed. Bob, better wrestler or announcer? Excalibur, what are you saying?
Probably announcer. I don't really love him as an announcer, but like, I don't know. I really enjoyed Super Dragon a lot more. He's probably the guy I enjoyed the least in this match.
Yeah.
I do like when he takes that like suplex over the rope into the other ring and his leg like bangs against the apron. He looks like he considered every choice he made to that point. This feels like one for you, Alex. I don't know. I mean, is this the best Excalibur match? Is there another one? Is there other matches out there? What do you think?
It's either this or the Guerrilla Warfare match with Super Dragon. That's like the only two that really come to mind because, other than that, he was. Those early PWG years are weird because guys would just, like Excalibur, try to have like work rate matches and then eventually just resign. Well, fuck it, I'm just gonna do comedy stuff. And like Super Dragon was obviously a constant there, but the Guerrilla Warfare match where he like actually tries to like muscle up to Super Dragon and they just beat the shit out of each other is good. But yeah, it's one of the two.
Got you. I do want to know also because this match was an interesting watch, considering the heat on Generico after watching the tag from Sunday, because I'd watched this before and then I went back to it to kind of just because some things never change, right? If you have Kevin and Sammy or Kevin and Generico in a team, you just know that Sammy's going to get the shit kicked out of him for a lot of the match and Kevin's going to make a hot tag, and whatever form or fashion they work, that's going to happen. And the one thing that stood out to you, Kevin always has that like that energy and that intensity when he makes a comeback, right? He has that. But the thing that was noticeable here was this is the furthest back we go, and he's definitely without that roughness that has like defined him as a wrestler in the years since. And it's absolutely apparent in his look, vibe, everything. It's like he's just, even though he's pushing the pace and he's being intense, it doesn't have that edge that we've come to know as like, your trademark Kevin Owens kind of feel. So that stood out because honestly, it's a lot more present in the next match we're going to do, right? Like, I think you kind of see him take most strides in a lot of ways between match 1 and 2. As we get into these next few, he kind of feels like the same wrestler to me. But yeah.
The video of this that I'm assuming is the one we all watched that was on the CZW YouTube page does cut off right at the very end. It's worth calling out that Steen turns on Generico after the match and gives him the package pile driver. And so, like, from day one-ish, they were all about it. I don't think he has any interest in doing it anymore, but someone needs to steal that slingshot flatliner that Steen did in this match. That's a cool move.
There's a lot of like video game moves in this match, right? Where it's like, whoa, it's like just combining moves. It's fucking even some of them still jump off the page, that being one of them. But a good time for sure, absolutely, and an experience for Bobby meeting Super Dragon, the professional wrestler. We'll return to that on Grin Grappler Super Dragon in the coming months, I'm sure. Okay, let's move to match 2 here. We jump just shy of a year forward, September 24th, 2005, IWA Mid-South.
God bless.
Talk about a moment in time. Here we go. Ted Petty Invitational. Opposite Matt Sydal in the tournament final. There's a lot of there's a lot here. So firstly, Eric Cannon is not he's not in the match, but like he kind of is in he gets in the match so he could not be in the match anymore. But it's basically a singles match. But he was supposed to be in the final, right? It was supposed to be a triple threat elimination final.
Yeah.
I wanted to quickly run this down because this tournament, I know these tournaments like by a match or two, and I always think of 2005 as the Hero Dragon match, Hero and Brian, that is. So I wanted to look at where these two guys, how they got to the final. Kevin Steen went through Nate Webb, Brad Bradley, and Mike Quackenbush, indeed. Sydal went through El Generico, Tyler Black, and Chris Sabin. Which is, like, looking at this now, Matt Sydal wins this tournament with wins over Generico. So, just for the sake of conversation here, Sami Zayn, Seth freaking Rollins, Chris Sabin, and Kevin Owens. Like, whoa, like, Matt Sydal's a hell of a career, but that's kind of crazy to look back on. I mean, good Lord. So, yeah, there's some kind of lore, but basically to explain, this tournament was considered to be like, a collection of independence finest, basically, right? Is the idea, Alex. And we have that here in a match that I found to be kind of fascinating in that it was, to me, not all what I had imagined when I saw this on the listing. When you suggested it, I thought Sydal and Steen in a tournament final for Ted P. They're probably going to do every fucking move possible. But honestly, Steen, he takes a big chunky control segment. He just kind of roughs. This match, frankly, was not dissimilar to if you tomorrow asked Matt Sydal and Kevin Owens to have a match on TV. It would not be that different to this, honestly, especially the first 2 acts. So this was an interesting one. Oracle, was you surprised also? This was like, I liked it, but it was kind of jarring in that regard.
Yeah, I guess so, a little bit. I've watched bits and pieces of some TPIs over the years, and including going to the 2015 Ted Petty, which I believe Chris Hero won. I think
it was either 16 or 15 he won it, right?
Yeah. But possibly because every time I watch an old IWA Mid-South show, it's like every gymnasium I've ever been to for wrestling. And then you got fucking Ian in his fucking basketball shorts and ball cap, like
talking for 30 minutes about God knows what.
It's just incredible. It's incredible stuff. That's real graps right there.
Yes.
But this was really good, man. This fucking ruled. Like,
yeah.
I've always been a fan of Sydal's stuff, pre Evan Bourne, and now. But like this had to be one of his big breakout deals here. He was really good in this, just selling, bumping. Steen was great, on offense, bullying him, beating the heck out of him. Of course, they did the bit where Eric Cannon stumbles out because I think they did an angle right where Hero beats the shit out of him or something.
Yeah, and I think he might have been also legitimately injured.
Okay, gotcha.
Oracle, could Eric Cannon have been wearing more 2005 independent wrestling gear?
Oh no, absolutely not. He looked like literally 75% of basically any wrestler that worked from like IWA Mid South all the way down to to like Central Florida. Like,
Yeah.
like, there's- but
No disrespect, Eric. We love you and we know you're listening, but come on, those pleather
quickly,
geared.
while we're on the subject, are you aware, Alex, that he worked like a couple AEW shows? Are you aware of this?
Of course he did. No, I
He-
wasn't, but of course he did.
I would like to read a Eric Cannon match to you. He teamed with Kevin Blackwood against the all-star tandem of Penta El Zero Miedo and Eddie Kingston.
that's incredible.
And they went 3 minutes, and I remember just seeing Cannon and King on that graphic was like, what a time to be alive, fellas.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Sorry, Devin, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you're good. You're good.
Continue, Oracle,
Yeah,
go.
this was a man. This was really good shit, man. I kind of want to go back and watch some of those other matches. I mean, 2005 Tyler Black is fucking terrible, but
Well, 2023, brother, and I'm not sure where we're at with that one.
yeah. I'm not so sure. Sure either. But wasn't that when Rollins was, or I'm sorry, Colby was coming out to like when he would like.
He would
run around.
Yeah.
It's fucking embarrassing. Anyways, yeah, this was awesome.
Wait, I can't remember. Was this the one where he? This might have been the show where he springboarded off the really fat fan. Have you ever seen that clip?
Yeah, I don't know if it's this, but I've seen it. Yeah,
I'm not sure if I've seen it.
Because I think he's wrestling Seidel, and there's this guy that's like standing against the ring, and Brother's pushing, probably 400 lbs, and Black just takes a running start and springboards off the dude's gut and moonsaults. It might be this, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, I just honestly, I watched this 3 days ago or 2 or 3 days ago, and now I'm blanking a little bit, like on certain details. But I just remember like thinking this was like way better than I thought it was going to be.
it's broad strokes anyway.
And remember thinking it was really, really good, and wanting to see other parts of the tournament because of it.
I've got to say, we're never going to bring him up in the same breath as some of these other fellas, but Seidel is quite remarkable, isn't he? I mean, because he's still really good. And Seidel, he physically looks great. He still moves great. I mean, obviously, he's not as quick as he was then, but he's a really polished professional wrestler, and he's changed his style some. He's quite special in that regard. He's never going to be, he was never going to be a massive star with the way things worked out. God, 15 years ago now. But he's had a really nice kind of second half of his career over this last decade. So credit to him. Bobby, what did you think of this, mate?
Yeah, I enjoyed it quite a bit as well. I kind of like you thought they'd have some more kind of big spots in it, but I guess it was both their fourth match in the past 5 hours or whatever. So I get it, I guess. But yeah, it was entertaining, and two guys that I've seen a good amount of, especially recently with Seidel back on television, and another one where you can kind of see the groundwork and how they were able to kind of still be on TV. They just get it.
Absolutely. There's like a fundamental understanding of professional wrestling in both these dudes, and it's very apparent then, and it's been apparent in the 17 years since, so or 18 almost. So I agree completely. Alex, I think you said your suggestion was either this or the Tozawa match, right? I think was the ones you said for, and because of the kind of chronological element, I opted to go for this. Happy with your choice, revisiting it?
Oh yeah. And the Tozawa match is just kind of bonkers, and that's more of like a Tozawa showcase than it is for Steen. But this is, say what you will about Ian, and you would be right. But that guy, it's weird the way history kind of works, because for the most part, people just when they think of that era of independent wrestling, it's Ring of Honor, CZW, PWG, maybe like Jersey All Pro. Some people will talk about FIP, that type of shit. But like Ian would book these super shows, man. And yeah, they all were like 6 hours and stuff. But like there was a lot of good matches he put on, and he did have an eye for talent. He was the guy that gave Hero and Punk like their first big opportunity. And, Punk was like the man there. Bob, did you know Ian Rotten once booked CM Punk versus Eddie Guerrero versus Rey Mysterio Jr.?
Oh, shit. That sounds good. When was that? Was that had to be like what 2001 or 2002?
It was before. It was while Eddie was away, and yeah, it was before Ray
Okay.
showed up because he wrestled without a mask. And in
Damn.
classic Ian fashion, that match drew like 150 people.
That rules. That's art. That's wonderful.
But so I wanted to give IWA Mid-South some love here because God, like I know I gave you as the time code when I clicked that when I was watching that earlier today. It just starts bottom ropes broken, duct tape all over the ring. I was just like, take me back, man. But
Ian still cutting a promo pre-match.
yeah, and I found someone's blog post that went to the TPI that weekend, like that wrote it the weekend of, and I went back and read that kind of just no big like things stand out, but just kind of like the culture of the indie wrestling fan at that time, piling in a van and traveling to this show. But part of why I picked it was I remember like people didn't understand why Steen got into the finals because this at this point would have been the biggest platform he had like in America for a notable independent promotion. People were like, this guy, and so like. I think that makes the match even more fascinating. The way that he doesn't just try to poison Rana apron spots. Like that there's a part in this that he does all his shit in WWE where he has a headlock and he's talking into the camera, like talking shit. It's just like I thought that was interesting, and also like it's something you don't really think about, but I like about this. You don't really see Owen Steen throw chops that often, and he is just murdering Matt Sydal in this match with his chops. And
it kind of made me mad, Alex. I was like, where? I need me some knife edge chops in my grabs. Where have they gone? They were incredible here.
But it's a pretty. This match is kind of like a allegory parable or something of kind of what he became because you see everything that he has now. Like he's a little goofy, but then he snaps into gear and can kind of turn it on. We do get the 450, which I don't think we're seeing it again anytime soon. And God, it is thunderous in this match. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
And there's some walk and brawl bullying and shit. But it all works in the end because this crowd that had to be fucking exhausted after all of this, they by the end stretch are like rabid for Sydal to win. And then Sydal hits that like Smithsonian Museum level art shooting star press that he could do, and like he wins, and like the people, grown men, are jumping up and down with their arms in the air and shit, like they're excited that he won. So I think it's kind of been lost to time. I remember this was a big one on the forums. Like a guy made a music video set to Rise Against that was like a highlight reel for the whole tournament, and like that was kind of at least the forum I was on.
Kills me not to know this, but
yeah, everyone was like just really fired up to watch the show after that came out. But yeah, kind of the term hidden gem definitely gets thrown around a lot, but I think this is for our listeners out there. If you have the means, I definitely. Of all the matches we've done, I think this was probably the one that was the least known, and it's probably the one I'd be like, you should probably check this out. It's good shit.
It's especially good for this purpose too, right? Like if you're trying to look at Kevin Owens' career in terms of like him growing and finding himself as a wrestler, this feels like a point to research and go, maybe you always had the answers. I don't know. It's really interesting in that regard. But I am intrigued, Alex. What do you think is because you often will see, and I'm sure even people that aren't aware of what it is have seen Ted Petty Invitational following like some sort of insane match that only gets more insane as time's gone on. What do you think is like the quintessential match that these tournaments produce? Is there like a single match that you think jumps to the page in history as like, that's the best match that came out once? Because the one that obviously, being me, I always pop for the Joe Roddy match from the year prior. That's kind of like, you wouldn't think is an outlier, but they didn't actually work that much in the end. So that one always jumps.
The 2004, and I know Alex would know this because Dylan pointed this out to me years ago that like the 2004 Ted Petty was like considered like arguably the greatest independent wrestling tournament because of the names. And
I was gonna say
Aries, right, on that one. Didn't Punk wrestle Aries?
Punk and Aries had a good match, and I was gonna say the finals of that was Joe, American Dragon, and AJ Styles.
Mm-hmm.
If you can believe it, that match turned out to be pretty good.
Yeah.
There was I'm trying to remember what I don't think it was a tournament match, but one year during the TPI they did Hero and Kingston Last Man Standing. That was also fantastic.
Yes.
And
wasn't there a well, it's funny to bring it up now, but because it's laugh out loud Sammy Callahan. Wasn't there like a Callahan and Too Cold match or like an 08 or Callahan and Eddie Kingston or something?
Yeah, because I remember Callahan. That Ian was one of the first guys that started booking him. But that 04 one would definitely be where like I remember like they had like a 1 year low key like squash Generico, but it was like a really like crowd kind of got into it type thing. And that the whole point is like if people that are listening to this kind of understand independent wrestling at that time but have never read over those cards, when you read those over, you're like, what? Excuse me? This happened at one point in
it's
time?
outrageous, yeah.
So
There's like 25 names that like all made it big, or
That's the
or, you know,
thing.
or at least had runs.
I mean, here's the 2004 field: Samoa Joe, Roderick Strong, Nigel McGuinness, Claudio Castagnoli, Chris Sabin, Rain Man, Danny Daniels, Todd Sexton, AJ Styles, Jimmy Rave, Matt Seidel, Sal Renaro, Super Dragon, Eric Cannon, BJ Whitmer, Petey Williams, Chris Hero, Mike Quackenbush, Nate Webb, Hallowicked, CM Punk, Austin Aries, Alex Shelley, and Brian Danielson.
Wow.
Someone needs to make like a long form documentary, whatever it has to be, looking at that group of names and just pondering the different routes that have been taken since then by every gentleman. Like, there are guys who in that tournament who were equal to the dudes who ended up main event in WrestleMania, and their lives just went in a different direction for whatever reason it may have been. Like, and they're obvious names we don't need to name, but it's like it's just fascinating. I mean, the kind of clear parallel is always Nigel and Brian, right? And that kind of insane way their lives went separate ways, and now they suddenly appear like they might be on a collision course again, and it's like how wrestling's just is bizarre, and life in general is bizarre in that way. But like it's just gives perspective in terms of you say AJ, Brian, and Joe. It's like how, why? That's insane. That was 2004, correct? So in 2018, that was the WWE title match for WWE's UK tour. That was the match, and it's like if only folks would have known, right? They may have believed, they may have hoped, but it's just proposed. I don't think we'll ever see anything like it again. Honestly, I don't think we can. I think it's just a moment in time, that group of guys. It's fascinating. So there we go, folks. Act 1 in the books. Just before we move on, shout out some other matches. We'll kind of use this to just talk about all Steen work outside of Ring of Honor before he signs for WWE, because I think that's the best way to kind of contextualize. So a couple from me. There's a match with Pac in, I believe, 07. Is that right, Alex? 07 PWG, maybe? There's also a tag with the Bucks in a couple years after that, just before they went to TNA, I'm pretty sure. That I think is a great time. So there's a couple from me. Alex, I'm sure you've got an army of bouts perhaps here, right?
Well, yeah, I already mentioned the original 4-way from CZW, which is also on YouTube. Generico, Steen, Sexy Eddie, and XS. Pac is on here as well. It was either one of his first matches at PWG. He wrestled Chris Bosch, not the NBA great, but the white wrestler, who was he was kind of like, he didn't reach the level of success Blitzkrieg did, but he was like a name in the original PWG, and then he just got to a point, he's like, yeah, I'm done. And so respect there. The Super Dragon Guerrilla Warfare is one of those matches that the finish is Owens taking a psycho driver onto thumbtacks with his hands handcuffed behind his back. So it's, you get what you get in that one, for sure. And then the Tozawa match from PWG also is very good. Yeah, the other ones that we covered a lot of, just go back and what we were talking about there, but had a unique catalog. The one thing I forgot about was like when he was for a while, he used Drowning Pool, Tearaway as his entrance theme, but I remember he had gone through, the WrestleMania 18 theme song. He went through also a phase where he just would come out to random shit. That's why he comes out to like a rock cover of Word Up in the TPI final. And then I remember there were a couple indie shows at that point in time that people were reporting he was just coming out to Ass Man, but like completely free of any irony. Like he was just like, walking out like he was all getting jacked up for his match while Ass Man played in the background. Yeah, and then also I saw you posted there. Look, I've seen him and El Generico have matches live several times, and it's never been bad. I don't know if those guys at this point would be capable of having a bad match, and that spans all the way back to the early 2000s when they first got in.
Like, I was going to do this later, but we've kind of circled the topic, and it feels like we might as well just get into it. Is there a good parallel or comparison for what he has with Generico Zayn? That dynamic is got to be one of the most unique things.
The only one I can think of, and it is an all-time great one, and you'll get a chuckle, but I I do mean it, is probably Lawler and Dundee.
Yeah. My
In
God,
terms of,
look at
like,
that.
That's
The exact time you
serendipity.
said it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
That's a great call. Yeah, absolutely.
for like the only other pairing I can really think of, but they never had good matches, is Hall and Nash. Like they obviously had like a
Right.
run where they went through multiple companies, but it's not the same thing. It's not like, God bless them both, but it's not the same thing at all.
There are guys who are paired together, and
Jumbo and Tenru. You know, if you're making the
Yeah.
the Japanese
I
comparison.
think the reason this is so unique, though, to me is like, so if you just say it ended, say Generico gets signed as he did, and Steen never does. Which, just be honest, at one point looked like it was going to be how history played out. Right, at one point it looked like there's a famous interview. Kevin Owens used to do his show on High Spots, right, and he interviewed Nigel McGuinness, and they basically just sit there, and Nigel questions if Kevin's going to be able to live with the idea that maybe, just maybe, this is the end for him, and he's going to watch Zayn become. I think Nigel's quote is the new Rey Mysterio. I think is his quote, because at this point they don't know what he's going to become, right? And let's say that happened, they would have been great wrestling dance partners and soulmates. But I think the reason this is so bizarre is they're two guys who appeared at different times to have no chance of making it to the big time, and not only made it, they teamed up in the main event of WrestleMania. Like, there was no sense they were going to get to that point. And that's where it's almost, to me, it is so singular, because how could you possibly recreate that? It was
They
such a
wrestled each other
unlikely
at
tale.
WrestleMania and teamed up and won the tag titles at WrestleMania.
Yep.
I mean, Owens, specifically, he's main evented WrestleMania twice. And I know people get mad about the night one thing. Look, you close a WrestleMania show of 70,000 people, I don't give a shit if it's night 1, night 12. He did it, He did it against his hero in Steve Austin and alongside his best friend. Like, good Lord, man. It's been a crazy couple of years. So, I don't know. It's wild to me, this story.
Now that just came up, that Austin thing, I need to say it before I'll forget, is Owens had the best tweet from anybody that entire weekend after Brawl Out happened.
Yes.
Because while everything was going down and the news broke, all he did was tweet a picture of himself wrestling Steve Austin in the main event of WrestleMania, which you can kind of, you got to do some digging to kind of get how that's a dig in its own right. But I just remember that being like, that's art right there.
It's layered too, because it's like both on the Austin and main event level. It stings,
Yeah.
It's not just that he main evented against Steve Austin. It's like, it's outrageous. Genuinely appreciate this suggestion. It's actually a good one. Like, there actually is parallels with Colin O'Reilly. And Reese, is fully aware of this. I know this way warned us. It was not necessarily a bit. It's hard to see them that way because of how, things have gone differently as of late, and some of their matches have kind of got redundant. But there's definitely some ties there for sure.
That takeover match, I think, is still going on.
Yeah, I think so. I think they just entered the third fall, though, so we might be on our way to the finish here shortly. But nonetheless, let's move to Act 2. Kevin Steen's time in Ring of Honor, which was a time that I think in history people remember one certain thing, and they remember the kind of Scum era and Cornette. But I think his best work in Ring of Honor is before any of that shit, honestly. I mean, as a personality, he finds himself more perhaps in that second act. But there's some great stuff here in the late 2000s. We previously covered the work with the Briscoes, right, on the Briscoes Grin Grappler, which you guys, if you go and watch that, you'll see us kind of talk about that feud in general, because it was pivotal, so much so that they both kind of credited that in the press conference for WrestleMania. Right after their main event, they give a shout out to the Briscoes, which was very neat. So there's a lot of good stuff. We start here though with what I still believe to be the most and this is the wrong word to use, because the finish is expansive to a level where at this point in my life I'm like, enough. But for about 90% of it, I still think this is the best traditional world title match that Kevin ever worked. I truly believe that. Now, again, the finish throws that word traditional out the window, and I think it gets excessive. But there is a great, great match in here as he takes on Nigel McGuinness, July 25th, 2008, Northern Navigation, the first Ring of Honor show in Canada. It's a red-hot crowd. The folks are all in on Kevin winning the belt. Nigel's getting great heat without really doing anything, and he leans into it and gets a little more. There's a lot to like here. I'm intrigued what everyone thought. Bobby, what did you make of Steen and McGuinness?
Yeah, I loved it. Just very kind of physical and violent. And, Nigel's hitting him with a hammer at one point, and they're just doing a bunch of moves from the ring or the apron to the floor. We get a senton to the floor, and it's just they go all out, man, and I loved it. It was a great time. I think it's about like a half hour. It didn't feel like a half hour to me, and that's great stuff.
I do like an awful lot of it. I actually love the cutoff is one of the most, it's etched in my brain, the cutoff spot in this with him hurling him from the fucking barricade to the
Yeah.
apron.
That's one of my notes. Oh, that's this match because I've seen that
Exactly,
spot
yes.
so many times.
Mhm.
And Nigel's control segment is terrific. And again, I do think it gets excessive at the end to the point where it almost loses me.
Yeah.
I think Nigel hits approximately 27 lariats to close the match. But the meat of the match I found to be incredibly compelling. Oracle, I'm fascinated. What did you make of this, mate?
This was really good. I prefer pure champion Nigel.
Yeah.
From stuff I've seen. I think once he wins the world title, I think he gets worse. No, he's not awful, but it's just excess, right?
Absolutely does, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the finishing stretch kind of sucked, but that steam bump, man, where he gets heaved under the what the fuck? He does shit like all the time. That's like, what are you doing, man? Like even today, he takes that stairs bump, and he took it horrifically at the Rumble against Roman, where he just gets and like, what are you doing, man? Like, what the fuck are you doing? And there was what match was it? Was it Money in the Bank 2016? I think it was, where he takes like a Zayn or somebody gives him some sort of horrible, some horrific move on top of a chair, and where the chair's in the seated position, and he takes it on the back, and it's like
he also did the Homer Simpson bump where they lay the ladder so that it's folded but standing up straight, and then he took a Michinoku driver on it, and
he did.
What a complete lunatic!
Yeah.
Oh God, he's gonna regret that in 15 years.
He is.
But speaking of the Mick Foley comparison, but
unfortunately so, yeah.
Yeah, this was really strong. I was bummed because the finishing stretch was like, come on, but
it was way too much, bro.
Before the last 5 minutes or so, I thought this was really, really good.
There's like pieces to Nigel's performance here that are so great, so great. Like again, that work on his back, and I also love that dynamic they have early of. It kind of feels like Kevin's trying to bait him into a firefight, right? A brawl, because he knows like when it's on the mat, he's kind of outgunned. I love that kind of core idea. But yeah, lots to like here. Alex, what did you make of the Ring of Honor World's title match, mate?
This is a fascinating time to reflect upon, and I think has been grossly romanticized because, like,
yes, yeah.
A lot of people weren't on board with that Nigel title run, man. There were a lot of fans that like grew really tired of that.
So divisive, yeah.
And that's what's interesting about this because this show, if you watch this singular match, you still think this is like 0405 Ring of Honor, like where everything was working. Because the crowd's so hot, and obviously they still have like the Golden Arrow logo there. So it's an interesting one for many reasons. I was one that kind of fell out of the game with Nigel's title run because what we've been talking about so far is just the excess of his matches became a bit just tiresome. But in this, it's a little bit different. I mean, like there are so many Nigel matches that I think to myself, man, if you shave 10 minutes off that, oof. And that's kind of the thing here of like, I think if they had kept this like tighter, like maybe 7 minutes tighter, we'd be talking about this as like a great Ring of Honor title match versus just like, man, there were great spots, or great parts, excuse me, but kind of it goes on too long. Owens is traditionally not someone you see really laying shit in, but he's hanging with Nigel. Like there's a part where he gets in the corner, just booting the fuck out of him, Necro style. I was like, holy shit. The Tower of London on the outside is really cool, like just kind of a real simple, creative piece of business that I really enjoyed. I hate that I'm this way, but like Nigel blatantly broke the rules in front of the ref. He hit his opponent with a hammer, and the ref didn't disqualify him. And I was just like, "What are we doing?" That
spot was not worthwhile either. Like, if you're gonna break the rules, at least like get your money's worth. It was like halfway through it, Nigel realized it was a dumb idea and just like touched it. It was very unfortunate.
it's kind of what I went through like in my notes, but it's obvious why Nigel is romanticized. Is he fucking cooked his eggs for the wrestling business? Like, pulled his head open and be sizzling like a steak on the grill, and that's all because he just the love of the game, and so for that, people feel indebted to him. And yeah, I mean, that match with Brian, I don't. People talk about, oh, it's too hard to rewatch. Fuck you. That's the peak of the industry right there, man. But yeah, stuff like this, like I thought there was a bit too many cutoffs towards the end, and like the lariats just got out of control. To the point when he kicked out of the second one, the crowd was still like, yeah, and it really felt like the crowd was just kind of like, by the end of like, all right,
100%. Yeah.
I didn't appreciate the sharpshooter being like a legitimate, like when he gets him like in it at the end, the crowd come to their feet, and it's like the sharpshooter seems like one of those moves that's not, I guess Brett and Sean are paired together for life, but it is like the super kick now. No one really buys it as like any type of like real finishing maneuver of any sort. So
thanks, Natty.
Come on, you guys. That's my impression of Natty. But anyway, fun. A easily Nigel's best title match for the kind of quizzical run that he did have, because he had it over a year, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and this is, I think, historically speaking, maybe the match that showed that Steen could be like a traditional, really great babyface in a way that hadn't really been seen up until that point. Like you said, Joe, or that you kind of called attention to, though, it's not like he has too many other matches like this in his catalog, but it's kind of like it showed he could do it. And good shit. Too long, but good.
I think Oracle and I've talked about this a lot on like our Fed Dead shows and stuff, but I much prefer Kevin's in-ring as a babyface. I'm aware that as a character, he can be much more dynamic as a heel. But as a babyface, he can be Foley. He can make those bumps. He can be sympathetic in some way, and I think this is the match we see a kind of glance at that. Maybe it was maybe I'm forgetting some.
I'm sorry, because I just want to finish my thoughts, but so I don't cut you off again. I said fuck you at the palm strike sequence. I was just like, fuck off. Like when Nigel just gets him in the ring and is doing all that shit. And again, there's Joe Necro and Brian Cena are the only good like slap exchange spots ever in a wrestling match. So typically that's going to get me to revolt. But anyway, yeah, it's I think we're on the same wavelength here.
Yeah, I guess maybe I'm forgetting one, and if anyone in the chat can cite it, I'd genuinely be happy to, because I can't think. I don't think Kevin Owens had a lot of great matches, but I don't pair him with, like, again, the traditional, not the best suited word, but I think you guys get what I mean. It's like, your proper world title match. I don't know. I mean, is there like an example of that in Kevin's career that you had? Generally, his best work in a main event setting, I think, is when he's assisted by some plunder and such, which I don't mean as an insult. It's just kind of who he's been as a wrestler.
I don't know if that would qualify for you. The when he won the NXT title in that match where he just kept power bombing Sammy. Obviously, he wasn't the babyface in that, but that's not like a bunkhouse brawl or some shit.
For
it's
sure.
Just like it's got a story to it.
That's a who. I probably just unfairly anything with Zayn, you put in like a certain box, right?
Yeah. That's also fair. But definitely. I think we're going to get into it here in just a minute, but you think of like his ROH title defenses, and nothing really fits that category.
I liked his matches with the match where he wins the belt off Davey. I like his rematch, but I think the rematch with Davey's plunder too. So then one of those matches is just a match, and I like. But yeah, generally that's not. And again, doesn't mean he's less from the wrestler. Just that's who he is as a wrestler. But just
when he beat Davey for the belt, and he was so blown up that he almost started throwing up in the ring. Respect. Like if you watch when they raise his hand, he's like dry heaving. It's just like yes.
I may have misspoke, so let me be clear. In ring, I'm much more of a fan of Kevin as a babyface. When I say he's more dynamic as a heel, I mean he gets to tap into certain things personality-wise, right? That he clearly enjoys, and he can kind of use. For example, the program he did last year, the whole shit he did with Ezekiel. He has a lot of fun being a heel, right? He can be comedic, and he can also do the evil, like I'm actually the scariest man in the world thing, which is never been my favorite version of Kevin, but he can be very good at that also. That's probably the better way of putting it. As a babyface, he's straightforward more.
He like his presentation as the heel for the build to his match with Goldberg was excellent, and then also I mean, that match is what it is, but he got the most out of it in the sense of like when he kept getting out of the ring and like
Yes.
refusing to engage with Bill. So I believe he knows what he's doing.
Hot take. We will. By the way, before we move on from Nigel McGuinness, did anyone see the Bryan Danielson promo aimed at Nigel this past weekend? Anyone see this?
I did not.
I read the thread on it. Yeah.
Alex, are you aware of this business that went down on Sunday night?
So someone must have retweeted or something, but it was at that press scrum, right, where he was
Yes.
talking shit. Yeah.
Bryan was out of character for the whole thing, and then Nigel McGuinness came up and he said, "When I see him, I think I would break this man's neck." It was like, "Whoa, what's going on here? This is good." I don't know. I don't know what Nigel can and can't do, but there is a stadium in London that may be tempting him to do something crazy. We shall see.
The best part
We'll
about
live
that
with
is
that.
we know how Tony Khan operates, so he will come out to fucking in the bushes by Oasis if he
Yes.
brings him back, and so that'll be awesome.
Absolutely. Goes without saying, bro. Okay. We move to our second match of Act 2. Showdown in the Sun. Romania weekend. Last man standing. Physical media is appearing on the screen. Now, I was confused. When you cited this match, you said you mentioned that fight in the timeline. And then when I revisited it this week, I was kind of like trying to figure out because they have so many matches at the end of this Ring of Honor part of the feud that it's like genuinely hard for me to differentiate. So this is where best you can explain it, Alex, because there's a lot. Again, there's a lot. I understand that. But in the lore of Generico versus Steen, in Ring of Honor specifically, where are we at this point? Because this is near the end of Generico's run, was what you pointed out, right?
Yes, and unless I'm misremembering, which I'm now pulling up Cage Match to make sure that that's not the case, but I think he had this match and then the Ladder War, and he was done. Which the Ladder War came at the end of the year. So
Right.
I think like this was billed as La Revancha. It was when it was announced, it was El Generico's coming back to get like his revenge on Kevin Steen in the Last Man Standing match. And this like it was kind of like a bridge because there was this and then the Ladder War, because I remember Ladder War, that was in December and it was around Christmas time, and the big reveal was Steen defended his title at some show in like November or some shit, and then he got a Christmas present in the ring and he opened it and it was El Generico's mask. And so Generico did not do that many shows for them in 2012. He was wrestling in PWG full time, but not much here because I think one of the guys in charge didn't really care for him. I don't know if that's been able to be confirmed or not, but this was what kind of set up his ascent to get to the belt. And then the ending here with the Jimmy Jacobs shit, and it's kind of like the beginning of that Scum storyline. And so I'm almost positive this was their penultimate Ring of Honor match. And the whole idea when Generico finally did come back, it was like you and me one-on-one just one last time, because he still cheated to win this match. And then Steen finally was able to put him away in the end. But this was firmly entrenched at the time where both on air and off, Steen was feuding with Jim Cornette and then trying to just like get a shot at the Ring of Honor World Title. I think this was just, they were trying to figure out the biggest matches they could do for this was WrestleMania 28 weekend. Hilariously, Showdown in the Sun Night 2 featured Davey Richards and Michael Elgin delivering a Dave Meltzer 5-star match that
of course,
has not aged poorly at all. The idea of that, but it's. I think it is like their forgotten match, and it's not the best match they had, but as we'll get to in a minute, I think there's things about it that are really good.
Oh, absolutely! This is pretty damn hot, man. They set a certain tone that the audience just embraces and rolls with, and it's electric before long. I don't think I'd seen this. Bob, which are the matches from this feud that you've seen? I know you've talked to me previously about a couple of their Ring of. Was it the Ladder Wars? Is the one that you particularly like, Bob? There's one that you prefer. I forget. Go ahead.
Yeah, it was the Ladder War. Yeah, I like it quite a bit. But this one, I don't know, man. This one's right up there. This one was very good. And I don't always like last man standing matches. I think sometimes, they're too slow. They're kind of built around the 10 count or whatever. But this one, they transitioned really well into the 10 counts. it wasn't necessarily built around it. It just kind of happened, which I liked. And yeah, just they really delivered, and I kind of figured they would, just kind of knowing the two of them. There was that one spot in the beginning where the fans are helping Generico up, which I thought was really cool. And I didn't like the ending just because I'm not invested in the story like that. So maybe with the context of the story, it makes more sense. But yeah, I liked it quite a bit.
To be fair, I don't think the fans in attendance really were really.
Yeah,
I was at the show and can confirm no one knew or gave a fuck as to what was going on.
Yeah, it come across. You could tell. It has to be, noted. Like Kevin's come a long way since the last match. This one, obviously, you had the big turn on Jericho. You had like chapter 1 through 8 of their feud in Ring of Honor then, and then you picked it up here again. There's a lot has changed. I will say, credit to him. In your mind, you could be excused for thinking that Kevin looks exactly the same now as he has since he was Ring of Honor champ, or whatever. Kevin has dropped a lot of weight, right? He's dropped a lot of weight. My brain doesn't necessarily appreciate that, honestly. I kind of just, because his gear's basically the same. Right? They put a logo on the shorts or whatever, but he's the same guy now. He's lost a lot of weight since then. It has to be said that it is striking when you watch these matches in order, and Nigel goes from being the world's champion to being on commentary for this. You kind of go, man, things have changed a lot, right? For Nigel specifically, and just Ring of Honor in general has changed so much since that last match in this little run here. So it's interesting in that regard. It's a hell of a hoot. Oracle, I'm intrigued. I couldn't tell you if this would be your bag or not. What did you think of the last man standing match?
I thought this was pretty great. It's more of your standard last man standing match in terms of pacing, but they paced it really well, and as Bobby pointed out, they did the transitions really well. I liked all the big spots. Generico's big dive off that platform where the fans was awesome. This was really, really good. The finish sucked. Didn't really make sense. I've heard of the Scum group before, whatever horse shit that was. But the funny thing is, this is the same show as Elgin Davey Richards, or is it?
That was the night after.
So the night after, I'll never forget. Dylan was like, "Well, there's this match they call 5 stars. I think it sucks, but I'd be wondering what you think of this." And I watched it. And I was like, "Oh yeah, this shit's fucking terrible." Because it was during WrestleMania weekend, and one other thing to point out in this match is that they were doing the yes chants early on, and because this is right when they got big with Danielson.
Well, this is the infamous 18 seconds happened to Mania that weekend.
Yeah.
My God, I didn't even think about that. It's weird how different timelines in my brain operate differently. That feels like longer ago to me for some reason. That feels like a lifetime ago. That was Dwayne and Cena in this weekend, right? That was
once
that
in
weekend.
A lifetime.
Yeah, my God, the actual first once in a lifetime. Okay, look, everything here is true, but now with the blessed by hindsight, Eddie Edwards is very spiteful putting him on that list in the end. There, I mean. There's different elements at play now. We have to be careful how we handle these situations.
He just looked like such a bland white guy at the time, though, that it was just kind of like.
Oh, he's on the list. It's just those two are now on a different list, and when you put him,
the government
criminals would be the.
So, with that in mind, yes.
Oh, I was just gonna run down a few additional thoughts on this.
No, go for it. Go for it. Anyway. Go for it, mate.
One, it was at the historic War Memorial Coliseum in Fort Lauderdale, which you can see on many old episodes of NWA, and ECW ran there quite often.
Yeah, they did. Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if anyone else noticed this, but right at the beginning of the match, when they're brawling outside, Generico hits Steen in the back, and Steen falls forward and bumps into a fan who's dressed as has the Hatchet Man, the Juggalo thing, and he's got this big Hatchet Man medallion, and Steen goes face first into it and sells the medallion like he hit the guy's chest, and I don't know, I thought that was really funny. We got to give the shout out to Tie Dye Guy here. He gets his moment on camera where he starts flexing the guns while Steen's selling next to him. One of the few fans who has a gimmick that I think is funny. But the biggest thing is, God, this looks like shit. Like, they had widescreen standard definition cameras, and this, of course, is one of the shows that famously the
Go Fight Live was this?
or this iPay-per-view didn't work. Like, it kept cutting out and whatnot, and that rightfully so. That Cornette time is a lot of LOL. This happened. And there's some point where Kevin Kelly says on commentary, yes, Kevin Steen is an athlete. And it's like, dude, why you got to bury him like that, man? Come on. We don't need to hear that shit. But yeah, nothing feels wasted in this. That's the main thing. It's just go, 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 go. And everything they do seems like it's with the intent of finishing the match. And yeah, it ain't bad.
There's some insane bumps from both men here. The reason this dynamic works so well is while Generico is most comfortable kind of being a ragdoll, right, for the heel. As we've discussed throughout the show, Steen is willing to play on both sides of the ball in that regard, and when it's time, he takes some horrific ones here.
The Michinoku driver on the platform is pretty gnarly,
and that's the kind of the worst one because like it doesn't even really look cool. It just looks like it fucking hurts, like it's not even flashy. He just drops him on his head on the stage. I will say the count they get out of that is pretty neat, right? Where the referee gets to 9 and Kevin almost rolls off the stage onto his feet. That's a cool deal. To Bob's point about the last man standing kind of pacing, this match does not go to those counts too early. They really only start teasing the count, the finish, when you can actually feasibly believe that someone's going to get counted out, which is sometimes we see these last man standing matches for a goal hit. They hit an arm drag and they go, ref, go, 1, 2, and it's like by the time the finish comes, who could possibly care? They do a good job of they mostly reserve it for the potential finishes, which stands out. But for the most part, this is not a match for note taking or detail work. This is just two fellas beating the hell out of each other for how long they go? 20 minutes, maybe?
Yeah, if that, maybe a little less. Yeah.
And it's like they work it like a sprint. I mean, these guys are nuts.
He didn't do it in this, crazy. But Bob, did you know that Steen was using the F5 as one of his finishes at this point in time?
Oh shit, for real?
He called it the F sync because I think sync is 5 in French, and so
nice.
It was always meant to be. There you go, Bobby. It was always meant to be. If only he'd have known that eventually they would work a 90-second house show match. And
well, hold on, because that match rules.
I didn't say otherwise. I just I wasn't sure that Brock was Brock probably he weighed up things and said, well, give me the cannonball.
Pull the shirt over my head.
Out. Yeah, I'll kick out, brother. But no, this is a great match. It really is. This is. I honestly, I was watching it thinking, have I not seen this? Maybe it's because the show is kind of lost due to the 101 technical difficulties that was emerging at this time. Because every month there was an issue, right? They'd have to put out a new statement every month, and Greg, the office boy, and the.
Well, that's the thing too. Like the YouTube rip doesn't look bad. That's how they broadcast it and how it's on the DVD. They had widescreen cameras that they couldn't shoot in high definition, despite being on HDNet. Fucking man.
Fucking
Insert
Greg.
Cornette face here. Yeah.
Who was the other guy? Greg, the office boy. Who was the other fella that was
it
actually
Shane Hagedorn that he hated? Was that the other? I can't remember if it was him or someone else.
No, it was. Oh fuck. There's two guys in the Ring of Honor office that Cornette claims were the reason it actually didn't work, and it's nothing to do with him.
Oh, of course.
These two fellas in the office who just fucked everything up. You won't believe it. It's
and
like
one of them reported to Sinclair that they were afraid for their safety around Jim Cornette.
How long was he in Ring of Honor for? Like 3 years?
Dude, that's what I was trying to remember this, like when he left, because we're going to segue into a story I love in just a second here. He left before 2014, right?
Yes.
But he was there for like the beginning of 2013.
Okay, when they sold to Sinclair in 2011, right? Right?
Yes.
And their TV starts, I think, in like September. So I think he's there for about a year of that. Is anyone in the chat? Meech said he left in October 2012. Okay. So, because he'd already been there, because he's the one who got to be fair, I don't really need to be fair, but I will be for say conversation. He got them the Sinclair thing, which, as much as my instinct is, was that really a good thing? It was the only thing that would keep them alive. They were going nowhere fast. Unfortunately, that's just the reality of the situation.
Yeah.
So I guess he was there for like 18 months, an executive, maybe. I don't know. Because he did stuff obviously previously as a personality, but as the actual kind of head honcho, maybe 18 months. I don't know.
Yeah, because he didn't have like when he was around for the CZW feud, he didn't have like actual power. He was just an
No.
on-screen character. Yeah.
He was a great on-screen character for that particular deal too, but it was very different the second
want-
time around. There was bad feelings very quickly.
Talk about things that like you read that happen now in a wrestling show. Like what? That one they did where Zandig and Jim Cornette had the debate of
Yeah.
hardcore wrestling versus technical wrestling.
Well, because I remember he was the authority figure in TNA, right? From like right around the time of the CZW feud until
He was one of the guys who they remember when TNA made that decision of like you can't work for Ring of Honor if you want to work for TNA.
Mm-hmm.
He was one of the guys who that affected because even though he actually had it in his deal that he could, like they obviously was not gonna like, yeah, we can't book Joe and AJ, but don't worry, folks, Cornette will be signing fucking autographs over it, like so he kind of that's why that stopped, so yeah, it's a really interesting time because if you watch the Ring of Honor TV under Cornette, it's like
fuck you, Dixie Carter.
It's like it became a meme, but the Smoky Mountain like comps are not totally like misled. Like there's actual truth to them. Like I've said this before on shows, but if you watch the first Ring of Honor TV, the first run of it on Sinclair, which is Cornette's like, here's how we're going to attack the world, because he describes it like it's going to be the UFC, right? But like Roderick Strong is doing this thing where he's like, he's like a ladies' man. It's like, has Jim Cornette ever met Roderick Strong? Like, you better off just saying he doesn't talk, and Cole and O'Reilly get the like
hybrid fighting rules.
Yes, well, indeed. What was Jericho and Storm's team called?
Oh,
fuck. How do I not think?
Thrill Seekers.
Thrill Seekers.
Yeah.
Yep.
So you know how their thing in Smoky Mountain is like, they're modern athletes. They're wild cards. They'll take risks. That was how he presented Cole and O'Reilly. Like, look at these kids. He just didn't have any idea what he was doing. And honestly, I think it's quite staggering how little that affected his reputation beyond people that actually fucking watched it. You know, like he didn't have a clue after all those years of talking about it. Like he didn't know what he was doing. But nonetheless, enough about
all that
him.
shit with Steen, like having lawyers and shit. Yeah, it was all really bad.
Eddie Kingston's talked about the match he had with Steen, it's a good match. But they've both talked about how it wasn't the match he wanted to have because he wanted it to be like, he wanted Steen to be like this clear heel. And it's like, no, Eddie's representing Shikara. Just let them have their match and let them fight. Like that's all it needed to be. But nonetheless, that concludes our discussion, I think, about the El Generico match. We did cover that thoroughly, right? We all discussed the El Generico last man standing match, right?
Yeah.
Okay, good, terrific. Other matches, memories from this era. Alex, I know you have a particular towel you wanted to chat out, right? Maybe go for here we go. Some more physical media.
All right. So the story, don't have an ant there. Don't have a gnat. I'm sorry. Anyway, chimed on in. It's a story of God, only in wrestling. All right. So this DVD here, Hell Rising with Kevin Steen, it's like a best of, but also they shot like their own like shoot interview for it. And I'm pretty okay, I'm Frankensteining together several different stories for this, so please don't take what I'm saying as the absolute gospel, but this is the like overall thought. I'm pretty sure it was Shane Hagedorn shot it, produced it, they put it together, they sold it without like running it by anybody, and at that point Sinclair owned it, and like Steen's legitimately like burying the company and talking shit about Delirious and Cornette and like Joe Koff in it, and then like they find out about this and like what the fuck, like they freak out and they pull it because it's like they're selling stuff that's burying their own company. And again, it's not just Gabe Sapolsky's putting this shit together anymore. It's like there's an actual like hierarchy of what's going on. So they pull it and stop selling it. Eventually, at some point, I want to say it might have been when Steen got signed to developmental, but it was like a little while later that they're just like, well, fuck it, we've got some left over, let's sell them now, like at a marked up value. So they ended up like I'm gonna assume it's whatever they had left over in it, and they sell it then, and now it's like extremely hard to find. And like if you like look on eBay, it's one of those that like sell, like I think like $80 is usually the cheapest you can ever get it for. And it's not like too salacious, it's not like honky tonk man or anything like that, but still, it's, Sinclair is a big fucking company, and he's just talking mad shit about them, and it's like got the Sinclair Broadcasting logo on it, so it's one of those like only in wrestling things, and also like just the independent mindset. And none of this is Owen Steen's fault, by the way. He just was doing kind of what they asked him to do. It's Shane Hagedorn and those people that put it together and thought they could just sell it for whatever reason. But it's just kind of like niche level, like kind of urban legend about the release of that. That's always kind of funny. And it's not like, he wasn't talking shit about Cornette on TV, but I think he uses like the word incompetent at some points, and like these people don't know that they're like, they don't know how to run a wrestling company, and it's
what a strange relationship he had with Ring of Honor for that whole period. Because again, as you said, it bleeds over onto the TV. It is the TV for a lot of it, and it's like, I don't know. I think in a lot of ways that brand really like sustained damage in that it was oblivious to what like kind of self-inflicted wounds almost. It was like, think less of us, please. We would love you to. It's bizarre.
Yeah, the point he called out, I think that's right too, is after Cornette was gone, and I think Cornette said he was going to like sue them for defamation because it said that, and then after it got dismissed, they're like, all right, buy the night Kevin Steen danced atop the Ring of Honor Arena DVD. We've got this here to go now.
Tremendous stuff. Any matches from this time, Alex, you would like to call out? The Ring of Honor, the whole Ring of Honor run of Kevin Steen. There's obviously a bunch, the Briscoe ones are kind of implied. I think anything with Generico, same thing. Any others that jump off the page?
Briscoe's, obviously, we stressed in the Briscoe's episode. The match where he wins the belt from Davey is fun because it is in Canada. It gets a big pop, and like the finish is good. And talk about Cornette being out of touch. Not their first match that like caused fans to pelt the ring with garbage, but the rematch that Lethal and Kevin Steen had for the title was really good. And it was like, I really liked the finish because it was nothing he could do could put away Jay Lethal, and so he gave him the brain buster to beat him. Like, he dove into his bag and found the deepest, darkest trick he could use. For those that don't know, they ran some big match in New Jersey, in Jay Lethal's hometown, where Steen threw a drink at Lethal's mom, and then they went to like a double DQ. It was not a good idea. And then, you'll get conflicting mileage out of it depending on what you like, but it kind of involves Jericho, but all the shit with Steve Corino, specifically the double dog collar match that Corino and Steen had with Colt Cabana and El Generico.
Yes.
I believe that was at a Glory by Honor or Final Battle or something, but there was a lot of good stuff in that. That was probably some of Colt's best work as far as in ring, because Colt, always tried to be like a wrestler, but he was good at the brawling shit. And then I called out in the chat there, the Steen Nakamura match is just pretty fascinating because of like Steen has talked about in interviews, like he had no idea who he was, and then after the match was like, hey, this guy's pretty cool.
Was the Lethal match you talked about from New Jersey? Is that the one where after they shoot the angle where Lethal throws Cornette over the table? Remember that?
Yeah, like Cornette like blew out his knees or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because the idea was like, present Lethal as like this kick-ass baby face, and Cornette talks shit and he throws him over the table, right? It's what a lot of shit.
That era of Ring of Honor, like you said it, Steen was like the sole thing that was like intriguing, but so much of that now, and it's going to remain this way. Ring of Honor, everything about it will always be romanticized at this point with the way it's presented, and that 10 years from now, people will not believe you that like shit that bad happened on that program.
Oh yeah, a lot of the Sinclair stuff is awful. Like, I think Delirious, he's hired as a booker in like the mid 2010s when he really leaned on the New Japan partnership, but he immediately fucks up because he leans too far on it, and the whole show just becomes like, who is Hiroki Goto going to beat this week? That's basically what it becomes. So yeah, it's definitely more complex than people realize.
They put Adam Cole on top. It was interesting there for a minute because Cole was obviously hot.
For sure.
Because he turned heel to win the title.
I think, obviously one of the other defining things, and look, there's other factors at play, to say the least. I'm never going to argue that Jay Lethal isn't a good wrestler. He is a good wrestler, but like Cornette and co, seeing actual Ric Flair in that dude is fucking insane. Like, he was like a double champ for genuinely a year. It's like, look, man, he's a really good wrestler, but like, no, that's not at all the role for him to play. But nonetheless, that's another conversation for another day when we relitigate this Sinclair ownership of Ring of Honor. Bob's already working on his plans for that, so we'll see how we go. All right, let's move it to Act 3, which of course is his time in WWE. Now, the way we've done this actually, and I'm happy with the matches we picked, but we cover 2015 and 2016, and we kind of leave this last chunk of time that Oracle was referencing, in particular that kind of comeback as a Foley-esque babyface is kind of, we'll circle back around it. But the matches themselves, we end in 2016, but they start with his first match on the main roster, right? Did he wrestle on TV before the Cena match, or was... I know they shot the angle, but did he ever squash
I don't
anything?
believe so, no.
I don't think so either.
He has like a squash match where he defends the NXT title on main event after this. On like an episode of main event, but it's after this match.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, I remember that kind of... This was a fascinating deal. Elimination Chamber 2015. Kevin had debuted on NXT TV not even 6 months prior.
That's right, our friend.
My God.
Alex was there.
He was. And
this
I remember
shirt is really fucking cool. I can't capture it correctly, but it's got the Ambrose Rollins title and then champion versus champion at the bottom. I think that's pretty sick.
We touched on this last time. So this is a very weird show, right? Because this was the show that was like just added to the schedule at very late notice, right?
And the chamber malfunction.
The chamber was a disaster in every which way, in both counts, because there was like that bizarre... They had a match with like the fucking Ascension in it. The opener wasn't it? When it was some insane tag team.
With the Dragons, New Day, Ascension.
Yeah.
Tyson Kidd's last match, other than the dark match where he gets his neck broken. But
you're right. Mark Henry is the famous deal, as you mentioned. And so this is the match this show is remembered for. It's one of the more unique deals they did in this era, where everything was so like, this is the way we do things, this is our system. Kevin Owens, mere months after winning the belt, shows up on the main roster, kicks the shit out of John Cena after doing a promo segment with him. He has the NXT title. Cena is the US champion in the midst of his open challenge run. He debuted with this angle specifically. He never goes back in terms of... He never leaves the main roster. Obviously, he goes back and eventually drops the belt. At Brooklyn, right, to Finn? No, in Tokyo. My bad. In Tokyo, he drops the belt to Finn. And then he has his final match in Brooklyn, the rematch. But he's a main roster guy after this. And of course, considering the finish here, which, again, I'm not sure people are going to fully appreciate, the response when he pinned John Cena, it was like the wrestling world had been literally shook. It was like it was this bizarre event. It changed everything. It felt like, which is kind of funny in hindsight because it feels so like you'll never be able to recapture that kind of novelty, right? Like it's a singular deal. But Alex, you were there before we even get to the match itself, and feel free to transition to that when you're ready. But can you paint the picture somewhat of how fucking weird this was? Because in NXT, he'd been there for 5 months, and we'd mostly see him interact with Zayn, which, while it's different to what he was doing with Generico, it's the same thing, right? It's not, he's in a studio. It's not like he's working these big buildings. And here he is wrestling John Cena, and it all happened like that. So do your best to set the scene, and then when you're ready, transition into the match itself. Alex, go ahead.
Joe, you're pretty good at this shit. You're a wonderful host because that's kind of going to be where I started. So very good job in starting that. So here's the thing. Like, nothing in wrestling can really surprise us anymore. Like, it's just kind of like, okay. Yeah. Like, Blake Christian could be in the main event of WrestleMania next year and it'd be like, all right, whatever. Like, I guess. But this was like literally just, there was no precedent. I couldn't think of a more dramatic word than unprecedented, but it really was. And it was like, up until this point, all we had really had to go by in terms of the big indie names. Why would I pick Blake Christian? Okay, fucking Effie's in the WrestleMania main event. Whatever. Punk and Bryan were like the big. We came in with hype and actually succeeded in the WWE. Paul London, Shane Douglas, a lot of other guys that they kind of just signed either to have or to prove that they would be right. And NXT still was like, we're kind of figuring out what this is.
100%. Yep.
And it didn't, it wasn't like the super indie yet that it would become in the next couple of years. And, Steen gets signed, debuts as Owens. He does the shit with Zayn. I remember that first takeover where that, like, I think that might have been the first time they did the shit where they do the copyright graphic to make you think the show's gone off the air, and then he turns on him, and I thought that was so awesome. But and then, like, Cena's doing the open challenge thing, and so Zayn had answered and had that really good match, and they had used a couple. I think he wrestled Neville and a couple other guys too. He rehabbed Ambrose in one match. Ambrose was kind of a fucking joke going into like WrestleMania 31, and it was in that random ladder match. And then when he wrestled Cena the next night and like hung with him, it was just like Ambrose was immediately back in the mix as like a guy. So Cena was like on this kind of hot streak, and then so Raw's going on, and then Owens comes out to answer it. Cena fucking rules, dude. The way Cena sells like him coming out, it might be like Cena's one of the best ever, but and then it's just this like all-time debut. People always think you have to have a match to have like a great debut, and Owens just kind of runs him down on the mic, and then says we are going to fight. He sucker punches him and gives him this finish or whatever, and then steps on the belt. What people don't remember is like they didn't announce that night that they were wrestling. They just randomly announced on the Twitter account within the next few days that like, hey, this show we added, this match is going to happen, and it goes on third at the show. So like the thought at the time was, well, that's weird. And I remember like everyone thinking it had to be Cena wanted to work with them, but the original, like the immediate inclination was, okay, well, they're going to do either a double DQ or Cena's just going to win, and it's going to be kind of weird that no one, and fuck you, you can say what you want. There is not a person in the world that truly believed Kevin Owens was going to win this match clean and beat John Cena in his first match in the company.
Wibby's finish, too. Not just Wibby's finish, center of the ring,
Yes, dead center. Like, no title. He didn't hit him with the belt. He didn't hit him in the dick, anything like that. And so, yeah, that was Memorial Day weekend that year. And I do not remember the reason, but it was in Corpus Christi. Significant arena. We're not going to get into that right now. But 2 days before the show, my buddy and his girlfriend at the time and my sister like all surprised me, like, hey, we're going down there for the weekend. We got tickets to the show. And I was like, holy shit. And because, that was like a dream match for me at that point. And I think they knew that. And that's why they got us tickets. And we went down there. And that arena is right on Corpus Christi Bay. So we stayed down there, went to the bay, had some fucking pina coladas there. And the side of the arena that's facing the beach is like all glass, so you can just kind of see out into the ocean there. And we went, and it's a small arena, maybe 6,000 max, and it was wild, man. Like those Corpus Christi fans, that's not like a wrestling hotbed, and so like they fucking love John Cena, but they didn't know who this dude was, this Kevin Owens guy, and they're kind of going along with it because it kind of at parts seems like what the Cena match had become. And this match is really, really good. And I think a little bit underrated. And then like there's pockets of people that watch NXT or who knew who Kevin Steen was. And when he won, man, that reaction was like people, like, little kids and their families were like, what the fuck? Like, Santa Claus just got shot in front of us by someone we don't know. It was, also worth calling out, for whatever reason, they gave Owens like a special shirt that was only for that night. Like it was never sold or he wore it again. And it was just a surreal experience. And like I said, now with wrestling, it's like, Stone Cold's been back and he's wrestled the guy we talked about. And, just the shit they do with all the independent talent that they sign. You got guys from New Japan that have come. You look at like things when I was a little kid, like signing people like Nakamura or Asuka or Kairi Sane that would just be brought over to be like a comedy mid-card heel or some shit that have like very successful careers there. And, the way the women's wrestling has advanced and all that, it's like everything that could surprise me as a fan has pretty much happened at this point. None of them were quite like the franchise player John Cena getting beat in the middle of the ring by the guy who like Jim Cornette says wasn't good enough to win the Ring of Honor title. I remember listening to the Observer radio that night, and Alvarez just was flipping out. Like he couldn't control his emotions. He's like, and it's true because it did happen. He's like, they could wrestle each other 10,000 times after this, and Owens could lose every one of them, and it won't matter because he beat John Cena in the first match that he had in WWE. And I remember my buddy Reed was at a local independent here in Austin, Inspire Pro, ran that night also, and he said like it was just in the middle of some match, and someone was on their phone and went, "Holy shit!" And everyone like turned around and like this match is going on and he goes, Steen beat Cena, and like everyone started like freaking out, like what? But I guess now I'll go ahead and get to my thoughts on the actual match if that's cool with you.
Works for me, brother. Go for it.
He's talked about this numerous times, but it needs to be called out. Owens has a very unique relationship with the state of Texas from the perspective of his wrestling career. You know, this was in Texas. He won his first Intercontinental title in Texas. He won the Universal title in Texas. He main evented WrestleMania with Stone Cold Steve Austin in Texas. His first WrestleMania was in Texas. And he's talked about, you know, in a couple interviews, it's just like none of this was planned that way. It's just kind of how it paid. And, you know, I guess there's some kind of comedic serendipity to that a guy who's very proudly Canadian, you know, Texas, he got his real he's just like my boy Gary winning here in Texas. So all-time debut. One of the things that I did not remember, and because, you know, when we watch these, it's like from a perspective of taking notes, Jerry Lawler is very good on commentary in this match to like a shocking degree. Absolutely. Because, you know, for me, he's been checked out since 2003. And in this, he's talking about like the ideas of what the wrestlers are doing and why they're doing that. He even calls out at one point, because he famously had an indie match in some butt-fuck promotion with Steen. And he talks about like, you know, I've been in the ring with this guy and he's dangerous. It's, you know, for whatever reason, he showed up to work motivated. Cena was great, and you know Owens is just immediately commands the ring when he comes out. That whole thing where like it's, you know, he's waiting for Cena to come out and he's just calling him on, like, you know, bring it. And yeah, it's like a hybrid version of Owens too, that you see he does work in some of his indie stuff. He does the catatonic into the kryptonite crunch thing on Cena, which is pretty impressive visually, but does some of his high flying stuff. But he also, you know, he's a forearm guy, and he's throwing some pretty sick punches in this match when he's keeping Cena down, which I really enjoyed. And there's just a sense of urgency the whole match, and Cena's on fire in terms of just like boom, 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 and he doesn't get blown up at all. He's just going for it. And I guess the other things that really stuck out, I don't think this was intended. I think it's me just reading into it. When Owens goes for the 5-knuckle shuffle and Cena immediately counters it, like, to me in my mind, of course Cena would never go for that because that's how he lost to The Rock at WrestleMania, was like letting his ego get the best of him. And then I don't know if he uses it as a regular move, but this was the first time where he teased the package pile driver and then turned it into a slam. And I remember like sitting like, oh my God, because, you know, Cena got away with doing pile driver shit before. And of all the matches that we had tonight, you know, usually we time travel a bit. And right at the end of this, John Cena was able to take us back to Sumo Hall in the early 90s, throwing, you know, Kojima, Kobashi-esque lariats, turning Kevin Owens inside out. And then he won. He won.
He just wins. Yeah.
It's as you tell, a match that it's one of my favorites that I ever got to be in attendance for, and it's not like that. That show wasn't fucking X7, so it wasn't like I had a lot of stuff to choose from, but it at the time, in the moment, felt like it was a very special thing to have been in person for, and you know, 8 years later now, like it's even more apparent that that's the case.
It's weird too because it's, in terms of ideas, as you said, it kind of is. It's like two Cena matches pieced together. You have the first half of it is the match that Cena generally works with most heels, right? He just sells. And the second half of it is the match that Cena became increasingly keen on, which is like the I am now in PWG thing that he did in 2015 in that range of time. So like fundamentally, it's not a match that has like ideas I call out as being, but for whatever reason, there is just something special about this particular, and I think we tried our best to paint that picture, right? Oracle, you can speak to it. Like, this isn't a match where you kind of go, oh, that's the match with that idea or that spot or that. It's just, there is a magic to that moment that is just singular to that occasion. And that to me was stood out as, I really like the match, but when you ask me why, it's like, because it's Kevin Owens' first match of the main roster and he pins John Cena. I mean, what do you want from me, right? But what did you think of it?
It's so like this match holds up. It's absolutely great. I love that you pointed out, Joe, that they worked the traditional Cena match where he's selling and Owens has a control segment, and they just go balls to the wall, man, and they pace and spread out the kickouts and stuff really well, the big spots, and it fits perfectly. They throw too much stuff against the wall, and the each new match they have is probably less than than the previous.
I think so.
But this
yeah.
one was so special because Steen just Owens fucking wins, man. I was this was like oh gosh, I don't know, 3 weeks after I graduated college. And so I was working at a summer camp. It's the last year I worked at the summer camp. So I didn't see this live. I just got to camp like a week earlier, so I was busy. I don't know, trying to put 10-year-olds to bed or something. And the next day, I would always it's hilarious, totally me. Like we would have like staff meetings, in the morning, and I would always pull my laptop up and like oh, what happened on Raw or whatever. So like I pulled it up and I was like, holy shit, Kevin Owens beat John Cena, and I was like, surely there's interference. And I was like, wait, no. I was like, he beat him clean. I didn't see this match for like months, probably till like the end of the summer after I got back home. But just an awesome match. Still a crazy moment. One that I'm a little bit detached from somewhat because I
Right.
didn't see it live. Because like when I was working at this camp, like I didn't get to see anything really. But yeah, just a really good match. I think it kind of stands out to me. It stands out as like the premier moment of that Cena U.S. title open challenge thing. Even though this match wasn't like
Right.
for the title, it stands out. With all that other stuff, that and the Cena Cesaro matches that were incredible on Raw in July. But yeah, man, this ruled. I think Alex lucked out on that one.
Absolutely.
On his birthday weekend, getting to see that one 8 years ago.
One of one, brother. One of one.
Oracle, do you think there's a part in this where very uncharacteristically Kevin Owens hits a big boot, but then turns his back to Cena and Cena rolls him up? Do you think somewhere Hogan was watching at home like, dude, no!
It has. Now you brought him up, I do have to know. It's one of my. Now look, folks, we all agree here. Hulk Hogan is a piece of shit. We all agree on that. However, it does have to be said that one of the great kind of examples of how special Kevin Owens is that Hulk Hogan he will continually tell you, no matter how little you believe him, that Kevin Owens is his favorite wrestler. And I'm always fascinated by this. Whenever he's asked who he would reform the Mega Powers with if he had a time machine, he says, quote, I would go old school with Kevin Owens. I don't really know what that means, but again, folks, a piece of shit. We agree. But
Bobby, you're a big Hogan fan. You're a big Hogan fan. What do you think about this pairing here?
I call him the immoral Hulk Hogan.
That was you jammed a spot in there like the springboard stunner in this match that did not fit in this particular setting. But
that actually sounds like a pairing that would work, though. By the way,
they would have drawn some money, bro. And
Hogan
would have put him over in.
What do you
in
mean?
Canada,
It sounds like it would work. Work for who, dude?
Bob, this was a big one for you, of course, as you said earlier, and kind of, Kevin's gonna be my guy. Thoughts revisiting it, mate.
Yeah, I mean, this is the first time I watched it, I think, since it happened, and I had a blast with it. Like, I forgot, it's so good, and it goes such a long way for Kevin. And, like, the U.S. title open challenge thing kind of reinvented Cena, too. Like, he's working with these guys that he wouldn't usually work with. He had come off, he ran through Bray, he ran through Rusev all in the past year, and everyone was kind of at the point where they're like, I don't know how much more, of this we really want. And then, he has this great summer, puts over Owens. He lets him win clean, which that's something that I know he did it to Bryan a couple years earlier, but there's not a ton of guys that were beating Cena clean on pay-per-view at that point.
He definitively did not do it at WrestleMania this year.
Yeah. Yes. But yeah, and then that kind of rolls right into Cena and Styles eventually, too. So it's kind of a turning point for Cena, too, in addition to being this big thing for Kevin Owens.
Those Styles matches are They're a piece of art, bro. I always get so the first one is the one where he just gets out wrestled the whole fucking match, right? And they like tell a very deliberate story, right? Money in the
Which
Bank,
one? What's his? Cena
the
style?
Styles, yeah.
Oh yeah, that's the Money in the Bank match. That match is great. In
That's
Vegas.
my actual favorite. But
Yeah.
the second and third are incredible epics.
The Rumble match is
Incredible.
an incredible classic, even though it's
Yes.
just move for move. It's just amazing.
And they don't
Well-
leave the ring in that one, right? That's the one where they just. I mean, they did not leave the ring once. I believe is the thing.
That's
of
that's
that one.
what
So,
Cena
hope-
wins the 16th. Yeah.
Yeah. I hope you're not intentionally leaving out the middle, the
SummerSlam.
bridge.
Oh, that match is amazing. Yeah.
Oh,
No. The Battleground match where it was
Oh yeah, the trio.
Gallows,
That match is
Anderson, and
really good.
AJ against Cena, Enzo, and Cass.
how could
That match
I
is good.
forget?
That
I
whole show
remember-
is good, by the way. That whole show is good, by the way. And of course, we're going to touch on it, but
Yes.
that whole show is like a great card. I really like that show.
I like that time. There's like a 6-month period there that's really fun. You know,
New
It's
era,
like-
new era, new era, new era, new era, new era, new era, new era.
I remember in that period, they booked Cena versus Cole Anderson for TV, and I decided this was going to be like a G1 B block match, and instead they went like 90 seconds. Then he hit the AA, and they just hit the ring and kicked the shit out of him, and it was like, well, I mean, that wasn't quite what I was looking for, but nonetheless, you get what you get. You know?
One of the things I forgot to mention, kind of in the build up to Owens and his run in the WWE, was like, it makes sense he's friends with who he's friends with in the business, because I don't know if you remember, Joe, he was one of the first guys that was really good about like using Twitter and YouTube for like productive means, and like not in the sense of like I'm gonna read everything and respond to it, but kind of like joke around with fans and like the biggest thing was, remember, he would always at The Rock, and he was always trying to get The Rock to like acknowledge him, so to speak, or like respond to him. And that's what made, when they got that picture backstage at 31, I remember that like made all the stalwart, or the hanger-ons really happy. But the point of that story is he kept doing that, and like his fans were adding The Rock too. And it's when his Twitter name was Killstein Kill. Have you ever heard the story that Kurt Hawkins told about like when he was training The Rock for Survivor Series? He said that one day The Rock came in and he's like, "So tell me about this Killstein guy. Is he any good?" And he's like, "Can you get me some DVDs?" So there was like, and Kurt Hawkins said like he literally like accepted the like PWG and Ring of Honor DVDs he gave him. So just imagine like Dwayne, on the set of G.I. Joe doing that thing where he bounces back and forth and fucking Super Dragon against Kevin Steen is on his television. And he's like, "Yeah, The Rock likes this. I could work with this guy."
I must say, there's been a lot of increasing weirdness with The Rock, especially as of late. But he's like, like his public, at least, perception and kind of approach to wrestling has always been pretty refreshing, right? Like, he's always been pretty cool in that regard, it seems. Again, guys like him are very, very aware of how they're being presented, but it seems that way, at least. So
there was that one, remember the Best Friend show, where the ending of the show was always, we take off our shirt and tweet The Rock, and like it's Beretta and Trent. I can't remember. It might have been OC, but they take it was the one The Rock responded to. He's just like, "Haha, you guys are crazy. Keep grinding, brother."
the stock Dwayne response where he does their initials is my favorite. Like he's like,
he
so
did
My favorite is when like Dwayne sends like the videos, on Instagram of like, and he's like,
dude, that guy is like in ridiculous shape, but he's still so vain that he has to hold it up here so it doesn't resemble that he has like a double chin or something. He's got to have his titties popping, and if he was accused of doing some heinous shit like that's how he would respond to it. Haha, here in the concrete jungle, pumping and grinding the iron away, and The Rock's here to say I did not do that shit.
Yeah, indeed, he's quite the again, an increasingly unique character, I think it's fair to say. But yeah, this match for John Cena is awesome. I think the amount that Cena gives him in the meat of the match only makes you like believe less that Kevin's gonna actually win. It's like, man, Cena's really making him look good. I mean, surely he's gonna pin him with the nope. Like that's not how he does both. He gives him a lot and then he puts him over too. So
this isn't about John Cena, but wouldn't you guys all agree that like Cena gets it enough to know? We joke about this a lot about people losing and stuff, but like you watch something like this, and Cena has to know if he does this, it means something. So he can only do it every once in a while. Like
Yeah,
it's
I
not.
would agree.
Mhm.
I do think in the end of his career, I actually think he kind of lost that, and he kind of got like he was so willing to put guys over. It was almost like, good lord, like.
Yeah.
So, for an example, put over is the wrong word, but like the Undertaker thing, right? It's like
Jason
I,
lived.
I I get it. I don't think he's talked about enough how like kind of insane it is that John like accepted to do that. Like he's the top babyface of his era, and he works that program like a chicken shit heel basically, and like just gets the shit kicked out of him, pinned in like 5 minutes. That has always been fascinating to me. I think that's a weirder piece of business than history has given it credit for. That's a really strange deal. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. I don't think there's any other top baby faces who have been exactly in that situation.
There's also something that could be said for like, aside from that Styles program,
Right.
when he hit like 2016, he was just kind of like
He was winding down. Yeah.
Krusty the Clown. Hey, here comes Sideshow Mel. Bada bing, bada boom. I'm out of here.
I always wanted him to work. When they were doing the Styles program, I was really hoping they were going to go to Mania instead of what they did. Like I was hoping that was going to be their kind of their match, because it would have been really cool for them to have that match at Mania, right? Like the Rumble match if you'd have moved it. But obviously instead, there were different things ahead for Mania. Shane McMahon match, which is now I'm taunted with very regularly. There is the Nikki Bella match that has aged incredibly with him and Cena opposite Miz and Maurice. So plans change, but yeah, do we think this is the best John Cena ever was, 2015? The most complete he ever was? I mean, he really has an incredible year that year.
Oh, man. Yeah, I get like, I think of
really
matches.
Liked him in 06 and 07, and I really liked him in 11, 12, and 13, honestly.
Obviously, he's got a lot of great years, but in terms of like, I use the word complete because I feel like this was the most he was suited to working with anyone at this point, He had his match that he could put anyone into, but he was actually willing to do things that were out of his comfort zone, almost to a fault, if we're being. I mean, the springboard stunner is fucking insane. I mean, what is he doing? It's outrageous. But he's doing it, and you got to respect it on some level. So,
work great, brother.
Frozen.
Oh no. We'll do that on the John Cena Grin Grappler. We'll leave that there. But a great match, obviously. Speaking of such, we head to Battleground 2016. We finish. This is a fitting way to finish, right? Kevin and Sammy even though I know they weren't Mania with the Logan Paul business, this is probably their most famous singles match because it's both the most eyeballs and also like a classic,
It's also, I forgot that they sort of framed it this way, but it's really the end of that 18-month feud that they had, even though it was like jumping from NXT to the main roster.
Yeah, it is.
Hey, help me out here, because I was going into this when I fired that pay-per-view up today. I thought this was the show where Enzo got killed in the first match. There's another pay-per-view where they wrestled after Enzo got like stretched out, right?
Spring, and it is either
that's Extreme Rules, right?
Yeah. Extreme Rules or Payback, one of the two.
Yeah.
Okay, so those things, they had a match though, right? That happened at some point.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to make sure I'm not crazy.
They had a four-way with Cesaro and
Miz
for the IC title.
Yeah.
And they had a big standing ovation at the end, remember? Like
they did have another singles match.
That was at Extreme Rules, that four-way.
Yes. Payback is the singles match.
Okay,
yeah.
Okay. There you go.
I believe, yeah.
I forgot about that singles match, yeah.
Because, Miz helped those three indie fucks to, carry them to a good match.
You see Miz do a springboard the other night?
He's back, baby. 2012 work rate Miz is back, baby.
Joe, listen. He did a running Rana in the match, and then he did a springboard cross body.
He attempted a running Rana and was working with Ricochet, who took like a fucking.
Oh no, that's not
Kurt Hennig bump.
I saw a veteran.
He needs.
He's doing good recently, man.
He's the one to dethrone Gunther. Miz has got to get the 5 o'clock shadow back and grow the hair a little bit and become work rate Intercontinental Champion again, 2012.
The best part about that shit, the best part about that was Miz like getting mad at the ref. I did a springboard.
That was good shit. Yeah, he had a match with. Did he wrestle Shinsuke recently? Am I imagining this?
Yeah. Yes,
he was like, did. That was pretty good and all. Maybe he's back, man. Put him in the G1. All right, this is when this is the show that took place after the draft, but before the draft went into practice, which is only relevant and funny here because this is when we all assumed they would be split up in the draft, and they were not anyway. Do you remember that? It was like the whole talking point was they're going to get Zayn and Owens away from each other. It's like, no, they're both going to be on Raw actually. So this is a blow off, but they're going to continue to be on the same show. So we shall see.
Also timely because we're still
Yes.
people are still getting drafted.
They are. They don't really. It doesn't really mean anything, but they're still
What?
red and blue, brother. I'm telling you.
Brother, who's red?
So this is an interesting match in that it's, especially the first half of it, it is clearly like a WWE variant of their match. But the thing that changes the match, and it's not this bad for it, it's good. But the thing that changes the match is that Sammy nearly dies. And I forgot that was the spot that transforms the match. It's the dive spot, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, after that, they just decide they're just going to have the match they always had and kick the shit out of each other. And the place goes fucking bananas for it. So this is quite real. Bobby, firstly, what are your memories of this? And then when you're ready, what did you think of it revisiting?
Yeah, actually, I went to downtown Chicago for this show. Watched it at Victoria's Bar. She had a wrestling bar where they do watch-alongs for all the pay-per-views. So went out and watched it. Picked a really good show to watch there because you had Bayley's debut in the opener. You had the Shield triple threat in the main event. That 6-man that Alex was talking about. And then you had this match on there. So, yeah, just a loaded show, man. And this was kind of billed as like, this is the last time these two guys are ever going to face off. And it's like, well, I don't believe it, but, maybe. But yeah, as far as the match itself, yeah, it was as good as I remembered. Like, it's probably their best match that I've seen, even going back to, and I haven't seen all of the Ring of Honor stuff, so maybe I need to watch, more of their singles matches from there. But yeah, this is great stuff, man. They both kind of knew what they needed to do, kind of knew where they'd be on the card and what they would have to do to kind of keep the crowd going and motivated, and it ruled.
It's not really a brain, but he basically just does a suplex on the apron, right? But
yeah.
Bro, Byron Saxton had never seen shit like that in his life. He thought he'd seen like a crime. He was losing his mind for this match. Yeah, this is a really good time. Oracle, same question to you. Memories of this at the time and this whole kind of era of these two, and then revisit.
I thought this ruled at the time, and then like on rewatch was like kind of like whatever. Like I remember thinking it was really good, but like not necessarily in a style I liked as much. Whatever.
Yeah.
But watching it the other day, I actually liked this quite a bit and thought it was better than I remembered it being. The two spots I always remember were both guys almost dying. Well, I mean, the Brainbuster spot, they've done before, but it's fucking insane. But Zayn doing this, trying to do the springboard moonsault, and he just sort of bounces up like a trampoline. And like you could see, like Owens is too far away, so he doesn't. He's like trying. He doesn't even really catch him in time, but he just tries to get some of his body in the way to catch, Zayn just in case he breaks his neck. And that spot, I'll never forget watching that live and just going, oh shit, like that was a very close call. But it's one of those deals where, I mean, it's one of those botches that it's like, fucking rules.
It helps the match. It does.
Absolutely, because it's
his credit
ender, and like it adds it adds a level of violence and shock back.
Sammy sells the shoulder too, right? To his credit, and Kevin works his arm,
which is he had the big shoulder injury the year before, and so they worked that into the match right afterwards, and they do a really good job of just. It's also one of the better hockey fight spots, especially the end. Because like I don't like the hockey fight spot that much. I think it looks bad most of the time, but the ending looked really good where Zayn won and like got a couple like decent looking punches in there that I thought were believable. Of course, I remember hating at the time when they did the half and half 2 times in a row or whatever. This time, it's probably not, and it probably was his no sell or whatever, but it looked like Owens was supposed to like land on his feet.
Yeah.
Go for it, and then Zayn actually hits it the second time. So I'll give it a pass this time. I actually liked it this time if I think of it that way. Of course, the finish is like typical WWE drama, but Zayn's actually pretty good at that stuff.
He's good at it, yeah.
He did it. He's done it to the whole Bloodline feud. I mean, he did it at WrestleMania with Jay. The whole
That was the same finish, right? Yeah. Okay.
Also did it.
Was, yeah.
He had that really. It's tough for me to talk about, but he had that really great emotional, like, I'm gonna finish you before he gave Roman the haluva kick for Cody to pin him and win.
Mm-hmm.
But I digress.
Oh yeah, I remember that. Yeah, and then Rikishi's youngest came out.
Yeah.
Alex will never watch a Fed show, a Fed program again.
I don't know, mate. I don't know. I'm telling you, I'm watching this latest stuff. I said, might be up to Jey Uso to finish the story, brother. You know,
right? Jimmy,
maybe Solo. I don't know. I'm just saying.
Yeah,
I mean,
but this match held up. I was a little bit surprised that I liked it more this time around, but it was great.
Yeah. It's worth noting we didn't mention it earlier, but the Showdown in the Sun match has the big hot start, right? The jump start where Sammy jumps all over him. And they on this time he tries to do it again, and Kevin's like, absolutely not. No, he bows, which is cool. Watching those close to one another, that's like a benefit of that sometimes. But yeah, man, there's certainly the different vibe that the kind of setting allows for this only elevates the work, which is great as ever. But it feels different in this spot. Alex, what did you make of Battleground 2016?
Yeah, I stepped out for a second, so I apologize if I repeat anybody's point. But I know we were talking about the. Yeah, I guess technically it would be by definition a botch, the springboard Arabian press, but like Owens gets under him, and also it looks brutal from the perspective of like Sammy's knees come like crashing down on Owens, so it's like, man, that probably fucking sucked. Yeah, the finish is great too. It's one of those that like you can't choose these things, especially when you have a pairing like this. But like that would be the way to end like have the final. There is no finality in wrestling, but like this is how it ends. The cannonball spot where Sammy's like wedged in the corner, like he's half outside the ring, and like it looks like his head bounces off the post. It looks so brutal. It's fantastic. And yeah, it just, it could also be because it was, after watching a bunch of their stuff together, it's kind of endearing in the end. Like, if you had never seen them wrestle before, it wouldn't mean half as much. But like in the end, when they're like countering counters and like, one of the things is like that shit show AJ and Nakamura had at WrestleMania 34 was like they wrestled that match like they assumed everyone watching it had seen their Wrestle Kingdom match.
Yeah.
And I can tell you to a certainty that's not the case. And also the fact they only wrestled once before, that doesn't necessarily merit that. And that can be annoying when you like, we talk about this all the time, lore and callbacks and all this shit. It's very rare you can pull that off. And this is an example of the closing stretch of this match is just like, yeah, this rules. Like they would know each other this well. Mm-hmm. And to be fair, the video package does a good job of, even if you've never seen them wrestle before, it explains, hey, these guys have known each other for 20 years. So it was better than I remembered, for sure. And, I guess because they were PWG alum, they have to do an apron spot in it, but it's, yeah. And even the drama doesn't bother me. When he's calling him on and smiling when like Owens is hitting him, I'm like, cool. That I don't know if that's like not allowed in WWE or if that's one of those things that Vince or whoever hates, but like the down babyface calling for more is like, I don't know why more people don't do that, because that's one of the easiest cards to play to get you like over with people. Is like, you're a tough son of a bitch. And not the best match we covered here, but I think a really, really good ending point.
Yeah, there's a charm to it, right? It's that, kind of that notion of seeing a band play their hits in front of the stadium crowd after 20 years otherwise. That's really what this is. And for a lot of people, this will be the match they always think of Sammy and Kevin. And if so, I think it's a pretty damn good one. Like if for anyone that's seen the rest, it may not be. It certainly isn't for me. But if it is the one they'll be most remembered for as dance partners, I think it pretty much encapsulates why this was such a special pairing, even in its own kind of different way. So it's terrific. It's worth kind of mapping out the story since then, because Kevin is not only active, but frankly, he's as relevant as ever right now, right? I mean, he's one of the top babyfaces in WWE. He's fresh off another WrestleMania main event, 2 straight in that regard. He's the world's tag team champion and alongside Sammy. And honestly, that means more now than it has in years, right? Those tag belts are more important now in WWE than they have been since, I wouldn't even know when. Oracle, you're good. I mean, those belts are main event belts right now. It's incredible.
Oh yeah, I mean they I mean, started with the Usos, and I mean like they haven't been the last year, really, the last 6 months, I mean, those belts have meant,
Right.
Mhm.
and of course, they're now they're having this program with Imperium, which has been fun. I liked the thing last
Yep.
night. They were hilarious on commentary, like legitimately fun on commentary. It was actually fun to listen to, because they just decided, like suddenly they just started doing commentary, and like Graves and that dumb fuck Kevin Patrick didn't even say anything, and like they were just like doing commentary, and it ruled. But yeah, I mean, like, it's weird. I don't even know when the last time.
Dude, I'm racking my brain. Like, there were like multiple years over the past 20 years where the tag titles weren't even on WrestleMania. Like,
It's like, I know this is a terrifying thing to say, but I'm going to say it because fuck it. It's 2 hours and 17 minutes into a Grin Grappler repetition. It's the most, right? Like, genuinely, since like Vince Jr. They just main evented WrestleMania and then main evented this following like a show 2 shows later. Like, it's got like Roman Reigns.
Now you said something. Now you said something crazy, Joe. So I got to rack my brain to think about when they would have been more relevant. But,
is that the first match Roman's lost? I mean, I know he didn't lose, but like, is that the first match he's lost?
No, it's the tag with Cena. Remember at Christmas?
Oh yeah,
about that, but that's yeah. But I mean, that's still the biggest match he's lost.
The fact that Roman wants the belts.
Mm-hmm.
Like Roman is at a point where that actually makes them more important. Like just him being there is important. So anyway, the point is he's got those belts, and since this match we left off at, what was it? 6 weeks later.
Wait, Roman didn't get pinned, did he?
No.
Okay.
No.
But he did get betrayed by those.
But I mean,
Jim and Jay.
Was there? Did anyone look at their hands or like look off in the distance? Like, what have I done?
The shot at the end with like Roman like sitting down despondent, and Sammy was like laughing at him, and like.
It was real. It was peak melodrama
right
and
there.
I liked every single bit of it. It was outrageous.
To go to
the moment
go ahead, Joe.
No, we get back on track, folks. In a moment. I apologize, but the reaction to the super kicks to Roman were like legitimately awesome. The crowd was like he'd stabbed him in the back. It was crazy. But Alex, where were you going, mate? Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna. The chat's brought up a few things. Demolition was immediately where my mind went, but again, Demolition didn't headline WrestleMania. Demolition fucking ruled, but and then the Dudleys, Edge and Christian and Hardys. Grin Grappler Christian, we talk about how good the Dudleys were at making like meaningless tag matches seem important, but I mean, no disrespect to the people involved or the titles, but the draw there was just like, what's going to happen with these guys? In my opinion, it wasn't necessarily about the belts. It was just kind of like, here we go, because the Usos have beaten everybody, right? Like that's the whole thing. Like,
how long did they have the belts for? The SmackDown ones. I know they unified at some point, but when did they?
About 21 months, maybe.
Yeah, it was a while.
Jesus.
Like that? Yeah.
They'd like, again, different show another day.
They beat Ray and Dom, right? Beat them.
They have to be the top team in WWE history, right? Like it can't be close anymore. They have to be.
Well, I don't even have a smart ass remark. I was just like lining up for something, but
they just have to be. Like it's outrageous how long they've been the top team now.
Dude, to speak to the entire point of what we're just talking about here, this was something that I think Devin and I were like in agreement on it, but like was constantly going on Twitter about was everyone freaking out that Sammy should have been in the WrestleMania main event. And it's like the number one reason everyone thinks this way is because the tag titles have zero value. Like people think that they don't mean anything. And so they did the right thing. Sorry, Charlotte, but the right thing happened where they put those guys on last on that Mania, and it made it seem fucking important.
Mhm.
And now
also,
when
you might
Sammy
rather
and
be-
KO lose them, it'll be important. It's like
Yep.
that's how it
Yeah.
works.
and you might rather be Sami Zayn than Cody Rhodes right now with how the bookings go.
Honestly, I think that was just like
Too
one of
soon,
those
man.
deals where online perception just misread like the whole thing. Because there's also that issue online where I don't think people grasp like the Usos are important on the show. So like they're just gonna work with the Usos. Like, yeah, man, it's like a big match, you know. Like, if people want to see that.
Yeah.
I do agree, this is important though. The demolition thing definitely is harder to quantify because the era then, the real game was, can we close out house shows? Can we, A Town, B Town, C Town? So it's hard to compare. I'd still stick to my guns on the crazy claim from a moment ago, but Bob has been very shifty eyes since then. Bob, maybe he's got something in mind. I don't know. Bob, am I on to say here? Or are you on the demolition? Train?
No, I think you're right on point. Honestly, I don't think the tag belts have ever been bigger than they are right now. And like you guys said, credit to the Usos, credit to Owens and Zayn, and
Yes.
especially with them being on both shows too. That's a big undertaking, and they've crushed it.
Crazy schedule for this era for sure.
When New Day broke the record,
New Day
Day's also.
up there.
I
Problem
mean
with
this
New
in the
Day
best
is,
way
like-
possible. I think the New Day is like kind of bigger than that. It's like,
I agree.
dude, they've been. We're going on almost 10 years of them being like a stable, and they like not. It's one of those things of like I felt like Vince or whoever in charge didn't really care enough, and then realized they can make money, so let's not fuck with it.
Yeah.
And now it's become a staple of the show, so not fuck with it. So Woods, Kofi, and Big E, whenever he returns, have gotten this situation of like they literally have just got to do what they want for 10 years, and the people still fucking love it. It's
The problem with New Day is though it's like they're not only bigger than in that regard, but they also are like maybe I'm to me they're a faction. you
yes.
Mhm.
because they would. It's like with the Horsemen, there would always be a clear team within the Horsemen, right? Like you can talk about the Brainbusters, they are the team in the Horsemen. It's like the whole thing with the New Day was that the team changed. Like they would, like in the Usos feud, they do a different pairing almost every match.
I was gonna say when they had the belts for like their record-running reign, it was always like a different combo that defended them, right? Okay.
It was
the
Freebird.
Dudleys and
Yeah. Which I mean, again, that's not like a discredit to them. It's just like it's hard to, when you have three talents of that caliber, and you can switch them out accordingly. Like it's kind of hard to look at them.
You see those Xavier Dom matches? I know we're getting off topic, but those were actually pretty good.
I did not.
on Raw.
No, I did not. But I believe it. Xavier's excellent. He really is.
Yeah, I mean, it's also fake bullshit we're talking about. So like what you use to quantify greatness can vary depending on just like your outlook or whatnot. But
Indeed. But yes. Anyway, so 6 weeks after the match we covered around that range, Kevin wins the world's title, the Universal title to be more specific. I don't think he had quite the run he was looking for.
No.
But he had a run, and that's what matters most at the end of the day. It's in the history books forever. When he's 70 years old, someone's going to come up to him with one of those shitty Universal belts and ask him to sign it, and that's real crap. So credit to him. Then he kind of had the ups and downs of the US gimmick that he did, which was, I think, the worst work of his career, frankly. And as Oracle laid out,
I don't remember any of that. I don't know what y'all are referencing.
It was not only bad; it was worse because it was on the same show as Jinder Mahal's run, and they happened at the same time.
Whoa.
No. I'm not saying it was bad. I'm saying why would you have Kevin Owens doing the American entry? He was the US champ. Jinder was the world champ. It was very strange.
Yeah, he had a bunch of bad matches with AJ Styles.
Oh, okay, I remember that because that's always been
and then they accidentally did a title switch that was botched, I think, and then Jericho showed up and they did a triple threat, so AJ could get the belt back.
I remember that Jericho deal. That was weird.
That
and as
also
Oracle said, he's rebuilt since. Go ahead, Alex.
For like just anyone listening in historical context, that's not exclusive to WWE. I remember there was some promotion that ran like dream match, AJ Styles versus Kevin Steen, and it was the shits. And so like for whatever reason, those two guys, I think Steen and Hero also had bad matches, which it seems like you'd have to try hard to have a bad match with Chris Hero. But like that AJ thing has always been perplexing. They had a SummerSlam match, right? They were like, and it was just, AJ Styles could carry any one of us to a good match. So it's kind of fascinating to see something like that.
I'm concerned for a second there. You know, the other side of the world, or you know, if you're religious, someone may have been calling Joe there for a minute, or some
Bro.
sort of bright light occurred.
On occasion, this new
Harry Funk
camera
was
I've
calling
got,
him home.
this new camera I've got, just like the sun comes through it. I don't understand why. I have yet to figure out why. On the Rest of Furious show last week, it happened like 4 times in one show, and every time I was like, "What's going on?" You know? But nonetheless, so yeah, I think honestly, most I've ever enjoyed Kevin was this last couple of years. I think he's been unbelievable, and he has got a special dynamic with Roman Reigns.
Yeah.
It's a feud that we don't talk about enough as one of like the great pairings of this last, era. And it's not an era that we're going to remember fondly necessarily, but they've had so many matches that were good in that time, and they have a really fun chemistry. So, yeah, so it's been a hell of a run since then. I thought it was worth noting. But let's put a bow on Kevin Owens, Kevin Steen. Firstly, what other matches do we want to shout out from the WWE run? Is there specifics? Obviously, I just mentioned Roman. There's a handful there that come to mind. The main event of both WrestleManias, right?
Yeah.
Goes without saying. What other ones? Any others, Bobby? This feels like could be your domain. I don't know.
He showed up to be in War Games and NXT in 2019, which was awesome.
Yeah.
It's a really cool moment. You guys talked about it a little bit, but he was in like 3 or 4 straight Money in the Bank matches where all he did was just take bumps off the ladder. Really added to the matches a lot because it was like when Braun and Corbin were winning them. Other than that, yeah, I mean, nothing really sticks out, specifically. Just a really impressive body of work. There's a lot more good than bad, especially in this WWE run. I haven't seen all the other stuff, but I think overall, probably just a lot more good than bad.
The Oracle of Wrestling. Anything come to mind?
I mean, every Roman match, even the Rumble match this year, which is just whatever. Obviously the closing angle is incredible.
Yeah.
But every Roman match is like exceptional. Like 2 or 3 of them, like the 2017 Rumble, right? Yeah. 20.
That was gonna be mine because it was some kind of gimmick where it was like no holds barred or something. Jericho was in the cage, but I remember they did some crazy shit. They did the thing of like I think they bridged, like they sabooed a table between the apron and the barricade, and Owens did like a frog splash off the top rope through it. It was nuts.
That match fucking rules, man. There's also,
and he won it too, and that was the first time he did the stunner because it got a huge reaction in Texas. Yeah.
Of course, the Last Man Standing, which the finish is whatever. The cage match is awesome.
Yes,
it's a Thunderdome match, but it's a great match. The Rollins match at the first COVID Mania is really good. Of course, it's not really. I mean, if anything, you can watch the highlights and watch the crazy dive he does. I don't hate the Shane match on the first SmackDown on Fox. I don't hate it.
Oh yeah, that one's alright. Yeah. I thought you were going to say the Cell match, which I think is one of the worst crimes ever committed on a wrestling show. Frankly, I think the
41 minutes.
And I say that as a Brit, you know what I'm saying? But nonetheless, the 4-way we mentioned earlier, the one with Miz in it, they carried the indie fellas in. Alex, that one's good.
Great, yeah.
Alex, any come to mind from the WWE run?
I think the boys have covered it pretty much. His wife is unbelievably hot, so God bless you in that aspect, brother. And you won the game of life, my friend. But yeah, my Roman go-to is the 2017 Rumble. The 2016 Rumble match is like one of the elite tier Rumble matches until the end when it becomes LOL Triple H wins. And like
I was there live for it. Yeah, it was incredible.
That match rules, dude.
Up until Triple H wins, I was so mad. God, I was 23 years old and way too angry for that age.
Dude, the end, like, this is calling it, and of course you're not going to call it an audible because Triple H is supposed to win, but like the way that crowd reacted, they should, fuck it, Ambrose wins this thing. Like the way the crowd was going nuts for him is just like. But anyway, the reason I brought that up is because, you talk about when we talk about the Cena Owens thing, and like how like there was no capacity to believe something like that could happen at that point. I always remember like joking with my friends like about like, oh, it'd be so cool, if Kevin Steen was in the WWE one day and he's in the Royal Rumble and he's about to win and then El Generico comes out, and that's basically what we get in that match. And it's a really like it's a moment they let breathe of like everyone's either paired off and doing shit or Owens is beating people down, and then the generic Sami Zayn music hits and he just does the thing where he straightens up and turns around to the ramp, and then Zayn's there kind of staring at him and then runs in and they go at it. And like that's the dumb shit in wrestling that I fucking live for, is moments like that, man. It's just fantastic. But I was there, so I'm a little biased. It's not a good match. I rewatched it recently, but it's a good moment. His match with Shane at SummerSlam 2019, because that's like Shane comes out and does his bullshit, because that's when heel Shane McMahon. That's what we thought the move was. But when Owens comes out, it's in Canada, and he gets just like this monstrous reaction. And when he wins, overcoming the odds of technical master wizard Shane McMahon, and wins. It's I think the biggest compliment I could say is it's a cool moment, but the match is also only like 9 minutes, so you can get through it pretty quick. Yeah, man, he's the guy. He's the guy that like even with Bryan and Punk, like you had to like they had to be tested when they got there. They put them through like dumb shit. Like you got to do it. Like didn't Bryan dance on TV, and like Punk like I mean Punk was the with the Tommy gun and the fedora for John Cena. And so and Owens admittedly has lost some matches he shouldn't, and based on y'all's reception of his US title run, been through some bad shit, but he got there and he was the same thing he was, and he beat John Cena in his debut match and went on to win the world title. And so like he's the guy that I remember I read about on forums in high school and got DVDs in the mail 6 months after the fact and watched him, and he's like it's been a progression to what he is now, but watching that, he's the same thing, and it's been fucking nuts. I didn't go to WrestleMania last year, but I was in Dallas for that weekend and walking everywhere and seeing his face on all the like billboards and all the pillars and shit. And he was wrestling Steve Austin in the main event of WrestleMania.
It's ridiculous, man.
When like what I just said, I would have to wait months to get a shitty quality DVD of him wrestling Super Dragon in a high school gym in front of 50 people. It's wrestling is profoundly unique that way, and this guy is like who's someone's story I've kind of lived alongside with him, so someone I'll always have a sentimental attachment to, and it's rewarding too, because it's not like he's someone who sucks. He's a great wrestler, very good promo. And someone called out in the chat, and something we didn't fixate on enough, English is his second language.
Insane. One of the best promos of his like era, right, of guys. Absolutely. And this is a good one to shout out. The Drew match from one of those early Triple H Raws where they tore it up and everyone shit themselves because it was a DQ finish, as though they've never seen wrestling TV before, but I digress. Good question. When do you think Vince became sold on Steen? This was a while back, but I think it's an interesting one. I think very swiftly, because I think Cena gave him the thumbs up, which was very important at that time, right? Very important. I don't think it took long. I mean, again, Vince, even when he likes guys, he was bad at his job at the end there, so he got bad shit to do, but he seemed pretty convinced swiftly, right?
And Vince is also a psychopath, so like Owens might have just shaken his hand the right way, and Vince is like, that's a goddamn star right there. And so and then of course when they actually got in the ring together and Steen did not take it easy on him at Hall, Vince was like, first ballot Hall of Famer right here, brother.
That is one part of Kevin's legacy that, is, I think, maybe we'll get to down the line, the damage that headbutt may or may not have done. I think there's some folks' careers that may circle back to that point, but we'll leave that for another day. This is worth noting.
Yeah.
It's very funny that when Kevin Owens re-signed with WWE, it was generally perceived as like a cash grab, and he has since main event WrestleMania on 2 occasions.
Yeah.
I mean, look, you never could have known it would go that well, but it is an example of where, when you're in a position such as this, and you do shows such as this, you're well served to not, be that bullish on things that you're not sure of. Because I think it's fair to say in hindsight, he probably made the right decision. I think it's fair. If I'm going on a limb with that take,
no,
I think it's worked out.
Yeah. It's funny because in the moment, like leading up to him re-signing, it's like, well, he's probably going to go to AEW. There's not much more for him to do in WWE, and I never could have imagined, he'll face Austin one year and then win the tag titles with Sammy the next year. So you never know.
It's so much was made of that story because the Young Bucks are his boys. Like
Mhm.
that's like, and Adam Cole had just gone or whatever and was on the verge of going, but it's not unique. Drew Gulak held them up for more money. Like this happens. It's how the business works. I think it's just that people, and Gulak could have easily gone to AEW, and who fucking knows? He could have been in
Right.
Canadian Stampede or
That's
whatever
the
they
thing,
did the other
right?
night. Like,
You never know, right? That's the thing.
Yeah.
It's like,
but for
it's
the
hard to say.
money's sake, and then exactly
yeah.
what you said, like the way it's played out, I this will get
Yeah.
someone will clip this and make me get crucified on Twitter, but he ain't having any moments
No.
ever in AEW like he got at WrestleMania this year.
No, you're right. Look, I think AEW, he would have done great stuff in AEW. I'm sure he had a great program with a bunch of their top guys. He'd have had a great program.
Wheeler Yuta.
Well, but there's no topping what he's had these last two WrestleManias. I mean, it's just as good as it gets. And to close, before we get to his kind of legacy thus far, what does Owens' future look like? I don't think there's a world title running him, but with this new world title, perhaps he gets one more run. I think he will win this new belt, frankly. I think he's one of the obvious choices to kind of, solidify it as a prize that matters, because the audience thinks Kevin Owens matters, and they're damn right he does. So I think so, Bob. Give me a percentage chance Kevin gets some big gold around his waist, quite literally in this case.
Yeah, I think it's definitely likely, especially, depending on how long this tag title thing goes. But if it goes till, Rumble Mania season, then you got another draft coming up. He could just jump over and be in contention for that other belt right away.
Absolutely. And before we head to next month's Grin Grappler, this kind of at last conclude our thoughts. Kevin Owens, any final words, Bobby? Anything to add in that regard?
No, I think we covered a lot of what there is to cover about him, from the matches, the in-ring stuff. But I think part of the reason he's done so well in WWE is because, like you talked about, Joe, even when he gets something like the Ezekiel stuff, he goes all in with it. Like, that Ezekiel stuff wasn't good, but it was more entertaining than it would have been with any other guy there. And I think we talked about that kind of every week when it was happening. Like, Kevin Owens was making this a whole big thing, and that's just what he's done. He makes the most of whatever they give him, and it's really cool.
Incredibly versatile. Incredibly versatile. Oracle, we have talked about Kevin Owens an awful lot, but do you have any final thoughts, anything you'd like to add, mate?
No, not really. I'm just thinking that particularly in the last 18 months, I've really enjoyed him. I hope he and Sammy have a nice long tag title reign. I'm kind of looking forward to this Imperium program here. Looks like I don't think either one's going to be. I mean, I don't know, but it didn't seem like either one's going to be Money in the Bank. So it looks like they're going to do it, Imperium tag title match, which you'll be seeing live at the O2 Arena. That should be really good. So
Fly it up, brother.
It's interesting to see who they might have, as future challengers as the summer goes on and we get into the fall. But I know that there's ideas and theories. One that makes me laugh because it's Triple H. Gargano and Ciampa.
Yeah, that'll be happening. There's gonna be a real effort to keep these belts at the main event level, and we'll see how DIY affects those plans.
I also think he might be in contention for that new title. So, but I don't know. He's 39 years old, but it doesn't matter because everybody in that company is, basically well over 35.
He's also
like Rhea Ripley and Liv Morgan. So
Triple H loves that dude. Like,
yeah,
I think he's going to have a pretty bright future even at this point in his career. So yeah, honestly, looking at the industry in general, 39 feels so young at this point. Everyone was, but
AJ is 45.
Yeah.
Late 30s is usually, Flair was in his prime as late 30s.
I honestly think Kevin is like at his peak right now. Maybe not physically, but in the overall understanding of what this shit, how this deal goes. I think he's great right now. Alex, any final thoughts on Kevin Owens, Kevin Steen, any final thoughts?
I don't know about that peak talk. He needs to bring back that slingshot flatliner before I'll bring that into consideration. But man, I was thinking about that Imperium. Like possibly like how good Gunther versus Sammy would be. Like they gave those guys like 25 minutes, dude.
I'm with you, but Gunther and KO is the one for me personally. That's the match I genuinely for the world's title. Like I think that could be a WrestleMania match. I know actually because Kevin could just sell, right? And it would be they'd clobber each other. Oh yeah. Either way,
that
yeah.
Inside out spot with the shotgun drop kick that Gunther does.
Brother, he took that bum on Solo Sikoa's spike the other week, and I thought this guy's got something wrong with him. He's insane. A spike.
Did you see this bump on Roman Spear?
He's unbelievable.
That was incredible.
He's incredible right now.
That bump was fucking amazing.
It's spectacular. Alex, where was you? Carry on.
Yeah, I mean, look, I had a picture of Kevin Steen on my wall in my dorm in college. Like, I told that story about high school and like reading the forums, that Cage of Death match, and how like important that was to me. And like, when he got, I forgot to bring it up earlier, but like, I don't know if you remember Joe or Devin, but Ring of Honor in those early Gabe days would do those shows called Do or Die when they brought guys in from around the country that had like a little bit of buzz, and that's how Aries got spotted for the company. And like, Steen came in, and I guess famously Super Dragon had a bad match at one of those. And that's why he didn't get picked up by Ring of Honor. But like, I followed his whole career, and when he got signed to the WWE, I was just like, well, I was still, he's the guy. He is the guy that made me like not immediately cynical. Because yes, Punk was one of my boys back, LOL. But back in the day, Punk was one of my boys, and Brian was my guy. And when Brian got signed to the WWF and he was on TV getting squashed by Great Khali and shit, I'm like, this is what they do. This is what they do. And so like now, because of Kevin Owens and what he's accomplished there, everything, I will almost sometimes say, let it play out to see what happens. It's like anything's possible after that. And then I forgot to show this. I don't know if this will show up, but like, it's a picture of me and Steen.
My God.
In the that is at the baggage claim of the Austin airport, and Austin does not have a big airport, so if you've ever been there, you know exactly where that is. And coming in from Disney World, and I had not slept the night before. This is like the weirdest story, and this isn't kind of like a but this is just kind of like how weird life is. I sat next to Luke Harper on the flight to Austin, and we touched down, and my buddy Brody and AJ and Julian were there to pick me up because my parents were still at Disney, and my whole family was there. And I came back early so that me and the boys could go down to San Antonio to the Ring of Honor show that was going to be there. And we get there, and I guess I got there right after the Ring of Honor jet got there because all the guys were at the baggage claim, and I was coming down the escalator, and I'm just fucking exhausted, and 5 Bloody Marys deep, just kind of like, where am I? And I see Brody, I'm like, hey. And then I see, like, on the escalator, I see Steen kind of walking, like he's getting his luggage or whatever. And I do the thing where I like point like, oh, you see that? And then Brody's like, yeah, the entire roster is right there. And I look over and like, Briscoe's, Adam Cole, Kerry Silkin's there, holding court. And then Steen, I guess, was going to go to the bathroom or whatever. And he comes walking towards us, and he sees I had my Masada shirt on, and he sees that we recognize who he is, and he walks over and like unprompted walks up to us. He's like, what's up, boys? And like kind of giving us like, the brother hug and the handshake and stuff. And I asked, like, can I get a picture with you? And he's like, yeah. And he immediately makes fun of the fact that I cut the sleeves off my Masada shirt. He's like, what happened here, man? What's wrong with you? And then so leading into that show, this was back when he would engage fans on Twitter and stuff. I had been saying like, hey, if you're coming to Texas, I'll bring a cowboy hat for you to wear to the ring. And he was like, okay. And so I jokingly brought that up, and it's like, well, I'll see you tonight, and I'll bring that cowboy hat. And he's like, yeah, I'm not going to wear that. And he starts like, he's very gracious, and he starts walking away. And my buddy Brody says to me, he's like, you hand him a cowboy hat, he's probably going to shit in it. And he overhears this. Steen does. He turns around, he goes, I won't, but I understand you could pay Sonny to do that. And then he just like walks off, and he walks off into the sunset. And so that's like my one personal interaction with him. And he was just a really, really nice guy, and kind of like a fun story I had to tell about that. So like he I'll always have like a sentimental attachment to him. And like this year at WrestleMania, when they came out and they had the PWG logo on their gear, like that's my shit, man. And that's anyone who's listened to multiple episodes of this can tell. It's that golden age of independent wrestling means so fucking much to me. And to see someone from that not only go on to like win titles in the WWE, but to reach his level of success, it's what I'm saying. He's the guy that made me. His success has made me less cynical about the wrestling business. And then Cody Rhodes lost, and I hate everything. But you know, it's it all is what it is. And he has a really cool story and a fascinating catalog. And you know, we didn't even touch on that after he lost the ROH title, but was still wrestling there. He was doing all kinds of indies where he was wrestling the strangest assortment of wrestlers. So like, what a tale that guy's got, and God bless him.
I think the best way to kind of capture how unique a career he's had is that at one point he was threatening to be one of wrestling's great underachievers. And he was always paired with that criticism of if he took it seriously, if he got in shape, this, that, and the next thing. And his career has now done such a 180 that I think he is objectively on any list of the business greatest overachievers.
Overachievers, yeah.
And that is very rare. A career will have both of those without, again, let me stress, Kevin got himself in better shape, but there isn't a like transformation. He's still out there in the shirt and the shorts, you know, and he doesn't look like every WWE superstar. And it's like, just what a unique tale that is, all in one. He's been incredible. I mean, genuinely, he's a guy who I just appreciate him more and more. And he's never been my favorite wrestler. I've never had a connection with him the way you did, Alex. But at some point, you just can't help but be happy for the guy, right? And he always has this reputation of being one of the good ones too, which is always nice. So, I really enjoyed it. I think he also now owns the longest Grin Grappler episode, which is an honor. I mean, that's maybe the biggest honor of them all. So, oh hell.
God bless.
Indeed. That goes above Austin, bro. That goes above, you know, main event of WrestleMania, longest Grin Grappler episode. But it's been nice to talk about a guy and not, you know, we haven't had to offer too many disclaimers. Just a pro wrestler that most people can agree is one to enjoy. So this has been awesome. Next month, we return. June last year was Terry Funk month, right? We did a hell of a time talking about Terry. I have 4 candidates for next month's episode. We have the phenomenal AJ Styles, who certainly has the high-end matches, right? I mean, good Lord, it'd be hard to will it down to 6. We have the total package, Lex Luger, who, while maybe not quite as rich on the top end, I think is a really interesting episode because he is someone whose, you know, reputation is kind of divides people. We have someone who came up with an awful lot tonight, Mick Foley. And we have the world's strongest man, Mark Henry. I think all 4 of them would be a great episode and a great time. But I'm intrigued. Bob, I'll go to you first. I know you get very spiteful otherwise. What are you reckon? Where are you leaning?
Yeah, this one's tough. I think of those, I've seen the least of Luger, but there's not really a bad choice in there.
So this does feel important. This show was originally, inspired by Bob wanting to do a deep dive on AJ Styles' career, and I instead said, why don't we do something that's relevant to each month? Oh, by the way, this month is March. Samoa Joe's born in March, so maybe we'll start there. But so maybe AJ. It's hard to say. This is a lot here. Alex, where do you lean on this one, mate? Any preference here?
I mean, I'll never say no to AJ, but Lex or Henry would be my picks because those would be the most interesting to. Oh man, so it would probably be Mark Henry because there's no way to do a Lex one without ending on an extremely depressing note, doing fucking like Lex Luger versus Sean Stasiak or some shit.
I guess you could
Chuck Palumbo, not Sean Stasiak.
To be fair though, you could do like late 80s Lex. And then I guess you'd do like WWF Lex.
Yeah, you could
do Nitro Lex. Like, you know, you could end with the Hogan match or whatever.
Lex Express and then end with the Biddle.
I think I would love to do an AJ episode. I'm not doing this to rib Bob. I would love to do one, but I do think there would be a lot of overlap with what we talked about tonight. in terms of his success story element and the era he was in, right? I think it would be a lot of overlap. Mick Foley, the overlap would be that we've mentioned Mick Foley approximately 50 times tonight. So, you get what you get. So I'm with Mark or Lex either. Also, personally, I think they'd be the two that stand out for me, which is, I know, hilarious, but I'm with you. I think they're more interesting. Oracle, do you agree with that assessment? And if so, which of those two pops you more?
I do think that they're more interesting. I think. I mean, Mark Henry would be really an interesting one. There's, I would struggle to see where we would start. Maybe we could do like the Booker match from Armageddon 03, which I remember being pretty decent for like an opener.
Yeah.
Because we already covered the Goldberg match for the Goldberg one. And then you could probably throw in like one of the Ray matches from 06 and then do the Hall of Pain run and then maybe 2 matches at the end. I don't know. It's tough, but I think he's probably the most interesting. I agree that with Lex you could do late 80s, early 90s 1 and then WWF 2 and then peak Nitro Lex as 3, but those would be the top 2. AJ and Mick are like juggernauts, but like I'm always we're gonna hit all the greats and stuff. I think it's better when we mix it up and try to we hit a great every couple months and then then we do some more interesting candidates. So I'm for Lex or Mark here.
I'm leaning Lex personally of those two.
Yeah, you do Lex.
I'm leaning Lex with the formula that we kind of just put together there. I think that's the way. Because for the late, you could do one of the Flair matches.
Pillman, Howling, Havoc.
You have to do that, you have to, because then you could get one of them as a young babyface and a young heel. Because heel Lex in '89 is probably the best he actually was, I think, ever as a worker. Obviously, his peak overall is the Nitro, the height of Hogan win, and I think Lex is really interesting because there's going to be room for debate as to like where he falls in history. He has a really weird career.
Does he have a lot of good matches in his WWF run?
I mean, I'm sorry, we would have to do SummerSlam '93.
Yeah, which is an interesting match, if nothing else.
Yeah.
Hard times did not breed better men there.
It really defined his career, so we probably would have to do that.
Yeah, just get ready for some nerve holds, brother.
Maybe we could do the.
Either that or the 10 match. I can't remember which one's better between the two. But
what about
brother? We cannot do that 10 match.
It's okay. I've probably ever watched that one time.
Never go back to it, please.
Oh, we could do the Tatanka match from SummerSlam '94.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Thank you, Alex. I was
just
thinking that. We could do those two. We could do the Yoko SummerSlam and Tatanka SummerSlam.
Yeah, that works. I'm with that.
Probably do the 5 or 6 best matches from his.
Dude, that right there is that's the story of Lex. Main event with Yoko, opener with Tatanka the next year, baby.
Oh, the Tatanka thing was a good swerve. I'm gonna lie.
It's a fun deal, but it's just it's fascinating compared to where he was headed. I like it because, as we've said a lot with KO tonight, he's one of those guys who's like universally agreed upon, and Lex Luger to this day is like a debated matter of wrestling history. Is he in the WWE Hall of Fame now? Or is he still waiting? Did he get in last year or some shit? I think he's still out.
Yeah, I don't think he did.
He's a big enough name. They wouldn't do. What do they call that shit? The legacy wing that they'll randomly put people in every year, like Bruiser Brody and fucking Gary Hart. He's too big of a name. They'll wheel him out one year.
Yeah, we'll see. I don't even know if that was intentional, which makes it so much funnier in the worst way. And on that note of all notes, on a night such as this, where there's been such triumph and jubilation and glory and celebration, we're going to end on that note. That's how we're going to close this thing out. It's been Grin Grappler. It's been Kevin Owens. Bobby, do you have any final plugs? Anything to shout out before we go here?
I don't think so. I don't know the next time I'll be back. We haven't worked out our June schedule yet, but we got fun stuff coming. We got Lex Luger, Grin Grappler, King of the Ring 1993, Grin Along at some point. Yeah, that's all I know for now, but this was fun.
It's going to be a hell of a time. The Oracle of Wrestling.
Yeah, I've taken. I've only watched a couple of shows in my 90s watch. Taking a long break, watching a lot of NBA playoffs. I'm gonna try to get back into that. Can't force it. I think it's healthy to take breaks.
Take it from me, it's healthy to take
if I didn't
breaks.
take breaks, I think I probably would have absolutely stopped like completely. But luckily, I haven't. I'm sure we'll think of something or be motivated enough to jump on here around Collision and Forbidden Door time. Maybe cover something there. Maybe with old Matty if he wants to show up.
Wow.
Yeah. But other than that, we're still here. Looking forward to Lexi. Lexi Luger, and then Joe's looking forward to Lexi and Shotzi and Money in the Bank.
I'm not sure that's happening anymore, brother.
Lexi's out the game, brother.
Yeah. Do you not see the news article?
No, I missed it.
She's pregnant, brother. She ain't getting in there with Shotzi of anyone.
Oh, shit. Good for her.
On that note, congratulations to former World's Tag League winner alongside
Perennial
Asuka.
great.
Yeah, actually, in fairness, I'm glad you did that because I think I had a streak of mentioning Alexa Bliss on every episode of Grin Grappler, and it would have been horrific timing to not do it on Stab all days, right? So
it shows me how much I'm on Twitter when I'm at work. Yeah,
there's one of the great KO is funny without meaning to be funny deals ever is when he appears on the aforementioned great Alexa Bliss's documentary where he's on a golf cart at WrestleMania and compliments her match with Nia Jax, which is something that my brother quotes this day because he just looks as funny as that sounds, on his fucking cart backstage at WrestleMania. So God bless the man. Anyway, Alex, do you have what's happening in the Contrarians these days, mate? What we got coming up on that front?
Our 12 Monkeys episode just dropped. We've been kind of recording out of order, so I'm kind of a bit flummoxed on what's coming out. We were on the live stream for The Cure the past weekend. During our segment, we raised over $600 for cancer research, so I was pretty psyched about that. And our patron right now, we're fixing to record part 2 of our Lindsay Lohan career retrospective, which I'm pretty fired up about. Going to be talking about her forays into TV, specifically her hosting gigs on Saturday Night Live and how much they dramatically changed each time she appeared, and also her multiple appearances on David Letterman that had some interesting results as they went along. But interesting cat, that Lindsay Lohan. We did something else again recently, but I'm blanking. You know what we do. We are thecontrarians.com. You don't need to know what's coming up to go there and scroll and find a movie that you like and hear our treatment of it. Facebook.com/Contrarian Prime, YouTube.com/@Contrarian Prime, on Instagram @Contrarian Prime, and then of course on Twitter @Contrarian Prime. We always make sure to include y'all in the bumper because y'all are so gracious as to let me come on here and plug our podcast. Yeah, not typically wrestling related, typically in the realm of movies, but be sure to go over and check it out. But yeah, as always, this is all. I look forward to this every month. That's the whole point. We're literally about to break 3 hours here. This is not something we could do every week, but like once a month, this is such a fucking fun thing to do. And it's cool to see that people like it because this is something the 4 of us could just do without like an audience listening.
Oh, yeah.
It's great. I love it.
I'm almost hesitant to tell them at times how much we enjoy doing it for our own pleasure. But no, you're absolutely right. It's been great as always. Thanks to everyone that has joined us. It's been a steady audience for the whole time, and we've been on here for 3 hours talking about one single wrestler. Now, granted, we went off in every possible direction from that wrestler, and concluded by breaking the news to the Oracle of Wrestling that Alexa Bliss was pregnant. But nonetheless, that's what we do at the Late Night Grin. We will be back at different times throughout June. I'm going to post somewhat of a full schedule here coming up shortly. So stay tuned for that. But for sure, King of the Ring 93, we're going to go back and enjoy one of the Hitman's finest hours, or 3 for that matter. So please.
Your dad never beat my dad.
Indeed. I love that match so much. But anyway, have a wonderful evening, folks. What's left of it, at least. Enjoy Dynamite, so on and so forth. When we see you, please be grinning. All hail. Enjoy this outro, folks.